YouTube? It's Brian Phillips. We have a box. We're gonna open it right now. All right, here on Brian Phillips RC, we show this entire process start to finish. According to FMS, this is a 10-minute build, so it's gonna be the shortest build of Brian Phillips RC history, or not. They also said it was a good plane, so we'll find out. Oh yeah, look at this. It's brand new to Brian Phillips RC, but not brand new. CJ-6 V2 from FMS. If you're watching this video when it's first releasing, it is actually on sale right now. So you wanna check it out. Links are in the video description below. You can buy one from the links. You'll help support Brian Phillips RC. And that has always been true, or at least since we started working with some of these manufacturers. But that means, wow, look at that. So tricycle, retracts. Okay, looks like some spring-loaded oleos on the sides, but we're gonna confirm that once we open it up. And this is a Warbird, so it's 1200 millimeter CJ-6 V2. So this is called the Collector's Edition, okay? So what are we dealing with for, whoops, got it upside down, sorry guys. What are we dealing with? This is all,
I don't, where's the English?
Here it is. The motor is a 3541 840 kV. This is in French, I believe. And okay, I'm not going to be able to read the rest of that because that's in non-English.
Here on the back.
Where is English?
It's on the back.
It's on the back. Oh, here it is. 1200 millimeters. And it looks like, what do we have? There it is. 3541 840 kV motor. 40 amp ESC ultra bright LED navigation lights. I guess we'll see if they're ultra bright. And they also have a landing light here. That's pretty sweet. Ultra lightweight carbon reinforced EPO structure, functional split flaps, and a PLAAF demonstration trim scheme. So it's not in a Warbird scheme per se, so we're gonna see how this turns out. But this is what they call the collector's edition, whatever that means. All right, so get yours today. And we're gonna see how this goes. This has kind of a unique wing on it too, because there's a little bit of a polyhedral. So it's, instead of just being dihedral, it's almost like F4U Corsair, but it doesn't dip down quite as much. It's not as much of a goal. So we're gonna see how that makes the plane fly. This is the first time I've ever done a CJ-6, so I'm actually pretty excited about it because the CJ-6 is one of the few we haven't done. And these Warbirds from FMS are really good. If you guys didn't already know this, a lot of the E-Flight stuff is made, the Warbirds in the size class, by FMS. You might actually see a lot of similarities, but that doesn't mean that they're bind and fly, okay? So this is gonna be plug and fly, and we will show you the entire process, start to finish, on how to make this plane fly. So we've got a manual, it's taped in, not folded, nice job, FMS, excited about that. We always appreciate a good manual that's not folded, and look how small that manual is. Show the people.
Maybe it will be a 10-minute build.
That'd be awesome. Foam to protect the foam from the foam, as we're used to seeing. I'll just lay things aside as we go. And you know what? It's so weird. We've seen this before, but sometimes it almost looks like they've repainted this. Like it was one color and then they painted, or they jigged it and then changed the body color. Oh no, I think what it is just overspray from the blue. Just a little bit of light overspray there. Okay, so this thing has a breakout box here, but it doesn't look like a reflex. We're not sure if this has a reflex. If it does, it's probably a V2. We're up to V3 now. And we're gonna be using AR630 or 631 is probably what I wanna use on this, but it's gonna depend on what features we want. And you can see, this is a split flap in the center. Very unusual looking flap on this plane, but it is most definitely, looks like a foam pinch hinge, and this must get pressed out in kind of a unique way. Yeah, look, there's your singular servo for that. Okay. Wing seems pretty strong, but that's what I was talking about, that polyhedral shape. So it's almost like a glider. It reminds me of the Bird of Time wing. So you're kind of like flat here. You actually are just a little bit downhill here, and then it goes back uphill, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna see if that impacts the flight performance. Of course, it's gonna fly like the Big Bird, which is one thing I've noticed as I've been deeper and deeper into this hobby, is that each plane has its own unique flying style. And what's so cool about that is that when you get your 400th, it's a unique flying experience. So we don't have like a super close tab on exactly how many we've done, but it's a lot. And I'm curious about this prop, and I'm sitting looking at it. And this is a unique looking prop.
That is weird.
Different design, but it's also got a lot less material in the middle, so I suppose that's going to help with power. But beautiful yellow tips, not painted on the back side, just the front side. Which in the model world, I'd like to see them painted on the front and the back, but in the real world, they'd be just painted on the front because you don't want to interfere with the pilot's visibility. Okay, so I don't know if this is Japanese or Chinese because I don't read any sort of Mandarin languages.
Nope.
But I honestly don't know if this is China or Japan. But CJ-6, I just don't know anything about it. So, all right, so here you go. Horizontal stabilizer and elevator. Pinch hinge, but nice reinforced steel transfer around the back and plastic reinforcements here. So we keep a nice bite onto the plane. Looks like we've got pass-through for bolts. These bolts are gonna go straight down, it looks like. Nope, those are nut zerts. So we'll pass up and through. And you can see how that nut zert is held in there. While I get ready for the next step, camera crew's gonna show you that. Also right here, there is a bag or something. So I'm gonna pull it out. Yep, there's stuff inside of there. This is just foam to protect the foam from the foam. And then there is a bag of bolts and stuff in here. Okay. So it looks like we have a prop adapter sort of thing. And then there's a quality commitment sort of thingy in here. So we'll just stuff this foam to protect the foam from the foam back into the foam. And by the way, guys, if you're brand new to Brian Phillips RC, welcome. We do this a lot. We've done this hundreds and hundreds of times. So if you're looking at a model and you want to figure out what you're going to get into it, you can watch us first and we'll help you decide if it's in your ballpark or alley or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so kind of a unique looking model. Why is this Asian plane is the only one we see that doesn't have an Asian in it?
Well, maybe.
Isn't that ironic?
That is kind of funny.
Because that looks like the whitest pilot we've ever seen from FMS. And it happens to be in an Asian plane. Look at this, really cool detail here. That's gonna help push the air in and rotate it, which is neat. I don't know why they did that, if that's just a cool detail, but it kind of blocks your view inside, but it's also neat looking. The cowl feels nice. There's a lot of strength on this plane. I do like that. It's a little bit wiggly back here, but barely. And that's gonna get reinforced, big bright LEDs. This has a double housing around it, so that's pretty sweet. So it looks like that got glued in this area. So that's kind of neat. And then down here, the pass-through for all the wires. And let's look at the landing gear. Looks like plastic. So it's just a simulated oleo here, compression portion there. So that's just gonna be a fixed gear once it comes down. Why am I saying fixed gear? It's a retract, but what I'm trying to say is this doesn't actually slide in and out. It's not spring loaded. And the typical rock hard 1.75 inch tire that we've come to expect from FMS unless otherwise greeted with something new. That would be one thing we would invite. Look at the piece count, guys.
I was just saying, that's...
Might actually be a 10-minute build because if you look at this, guys, look, nothing else. That is pretty incredible. And we love short builds on Brian Phillips RC, not because we don't love the process of building, but just because we've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of planes. And so for me, my thing is I love flying and I love showing how good a plane can do with just an average Joe flying. So I'm not some weird professional pilot that started flying when he was 6 years old. I'm probably a lot like you in that I started when I was in my late 30s or early 30s rather.
Yes.
Just getting old. But I've been doing RC my whole life. So as we've come back into the hobby, we're able to get into aircraft, which is what I would have done if I was a kid and had access to this type of stuff. Okay. And I've said this a million times, I'll say it again. I would have killed to have some of the planes that are available right now and the aircraft and the helicopters and the quads and the VTOLs and all the stuff we've done. It's just amazing. So much fun. If you're waiting to start flying, stop waiting. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. Just remember that. Okay, so let's look at the piece count again. So we have the plane, nose gear, kind of makes it a little hard to sit still. Then we have the wing, then we have the prop, then we have the horizontal stabilizer, which is gonna go in around, and of course the vertical stabilizer and rudder are already mounted on the plane, so there's not much to do there. In fact, they already have the control horns on there, which is really nice. And then let's get right into it. So the build is the second part, but I wanna see what's in this bag of goodies, because right now we have basically 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, 5 if you include the manual, 6 if you include the nut and bolt sack. Okay, so I'm just gonna pop this open real quick. Got a staple to keep all the loose ends in there. In case you guys were wondering, the staple is to keep the bag shut in transit. In the unlikely event that the bag would break open in transit, that could make a mess for everybody involved. Okay. So this is like a pitot tube or something, and you just ram that into the plane. It looks like you go to this depth marker here. I'm not sure if that's right. We're gonna see in a minute. And then look right here. That's open, so I wonder if something goes right there. I can't tell, from the it's kind of on the other side of the fuse.
Yeah.
Okay, and then bolts. And then one more, I'm having a hard time opening this. One more connection for what would be the elevator that's not mounted yet. So now remember, when you get this style, you want to hang on to these and work them a couple of times so that when you get them mounted on a plane, they're a little easier to work. And this one is just really hard to twist. Now, we have lost planes because these have come out before. But when I say before, like it's common, I mean, it's very uncommon still, but it happened one time to us. We lost it. That was an SU-27 because of it, in fact. So don't be that guy. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so there's either a spare or one of them's used for the prop. And then this looks like some sort of a cap. It's really beautiful. But I don't know, does that go on? Oh, it's a spinner adapter.
Oh,
holy cow, that's weird. To have a nut zert like that pressed into a relatively large red plastic piece. I've never seen a spinner quite like that. That's pretty cool. So we got a couple of decorative details, and then that is empty. Then we got one more bag. And this, of course, being the Unbox portion of the Unbox build radio setup. Camera crew and I work really hard to show you guys exactly what you're gonna have involved in a build. Okay, so these screws, looks like we got 5, so we got a spare. And then that's gonna go around the prop. Okay, we're gonna drop in here. Now, how do you know what direction everything goes? Well, we've built so many of these, we kind of know how they generally go. And it's pretty obvious which way this is gonna go on this particular plane. That's kind of a cool setup. So I think in real life, this must have like a pretty big variable pitch going on. And then look, they have countersunk holes there. So you can screw these through. And then I'm assuming that this will all slide onto the provided motor mount, if you wanna show them that there real quick. Okay, so our next move is to start building things. So in order to build things, you're gonna need a couple of tools, pretty small amount of tools. I've got this beautiful spread of screwdrivers, but it's going to be basically Phillips or probably looks like a 2 millimeter.
These are hex. I'm assuming they're 2 millimeter.
2 millimeter drives. Yeah, 2 millimeter drive to be exact. And then we'll use probably a 3 or 4 millimeter Phillips. So we'll see which one that is. In fact, we'll just build the spinner right now.
Okay.
And when I say spinner, I mean it's really more of like a prop assembly. So we're going to put this together. Now you can tell which way this goes because if you try to put it the wrong way, it's not gonna fit. It's gonna resist mounting. And if you put it in the right way, it's gonna go in and kind of like allow you to get it locked down in there. And then this one has that little saddle cut out of it. And then there's a little raised portion here. Okay, so it's gonna go right there. And then this is gonna go right behind. And it makes this prop more or less lock in. Now, of course, it's gonna lock in when the shaft goes through it. It won't be allowed to spin or pivot then, okay? So let's lay this out of the way for now. These are magnetically charged tips. 3 millimeter is probably about what we need. Now, keep in mind, normally Phillips screws, screwdrivers are they're not marked by millimeters, but this kit that we have happens to show the millimeters, so we always show that. I would call that like a Phillips 1, maybe a Phillips 1.25. And this would be more like a Phillips 1.25 or 1.5 in the 4 millimeter. So if you guys are used to the Phillips size classes, Phillips number 2 would be like your standard screwdriver if you have such a thing. I'll try the bigger screwdriver here. This would be like a 1.5. Oh yeah, it bites okay. Super easy to build so far. We show all the dramatic steps on these builds. Sometimes that is the difference between somebody having the confidence to purchase and the confidence to build. over the fear to purchase. We want to shut down those fears, but also encourage you in the right way, because not everybody is going to want to start with this plane. I guess I can't tell you it's going to be a terribly difficult plane to fly. It's got some dihedral in there. Even though it is a polyhedral wing, it's got dihedral for the vast majority of the wing, and it looks like it's going to fly good based on, it kind of reminds me of an AT7 Texan, or T6 Texan. There you go. So right there, we got one spare. That's not unusual for us with an FMS model, so we always keep those for later recovery. And Camera Crew's gonna open this real quick while I lay this to the side. So basically in the manual, you're gonna look for a couple of different details. Namely, what we're looking for is, we're looking for the center of gravity markings, because we need to check CG at some point. And if the center of gravity markings, and then also which screws go in which spot. Well, this model is going to be really easy because we're literally down to one driver and all the same lengths, okay? So if we have all the same lengths and we have one driver involved, this should be a really easy build, okay? So we're just going to get that out of the way and then dive right in. Okay, so the manual shows the pieces here, which is handy. It shows kind of a quick overview. It looks like it flies on 4S, 2200 milliamp hours. So we do have a couple of 4S 2200s charged, because that's what we used for our last plane, which happened to be an FMS plane as well. But we can't talk about it necessarily because you guys are going to see this before it releases. So it looks like we got a plug here for the LEDs. I noticed that as I was going. That'll be easy to figure out. They're talking about using the 32, it's a 32 millimeter by 3 millimeter bolts. So 2 for the tail and then probably 4 for the wing, I'm guessing. Yep, 4. And the second thing we're looking for is, how do we mount that? Looks like there's a little bit of a relief somewhere. I'm looking in the wing to see if I can tell exactly where that goes.
Looks like on the...
Looks like it's on that side. Do they have a little bit of a cutout here? Let's see. It's kind of hard to tell.
In the picture on the box, it's within the blue portion on the end.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a bump. Sometimes there's like a little bit of a molding, but I'm not sure exactly where it is. Yeah, it goes, they show this molding line, which is about where the aileron is. So I would figure on about, 2/3 of the way out or so. And so I'm just gonna grab this real quick and I'm just gonna stab it in. Now I am not gluing mine in, and there's a reason for that, okay? So when I stick this in, I'm not gonna glue mine in because this will be the first thing to break. How far out did they leave theirs? Oh, they went all the way down to this.
First little ridge.
First little ridge, yeah. Oh yeah, we're hitting something now. So it must be the wing spar we're hitting. So that's pretty good.
Okay.
That was easy. And then if we need to take that out for transit or for storage, then we can, of course, do that, okay? So then the second thing, or the third thing we need to do, is we're talking about why you might need this. This is gonna show you the control throws. We don't do control throws. That's not how we set things up, but we do try to follow these in most cases. And then the center of gravity, of course, is on page 9. So if you need to pause or whatever, it's 60 to 70 millimeters. We will show marking that toward the end of the build, okay? Looks like you're measured from just the leading edge down 60 to 70. So 10 millimeter range is pretty big for a plane of this size, okay? And then you can see here, they're showing where the elevator is. It's gonna go to the second from the end. That's the only one we have to land. All these should already be installed for the ailerons and the rudder. And of course the inboard flap. It's about as inboard as you can get on this plane because it is quite literally under the fuse. So again, also reminds me of the AT7, because if I remember right, it went all the way across on that plane. Kind of hard to remember. I think those might have been split flaps too. But I don't know when they decided, aircraft manufacturers decided to get away from split flaps and go to more of like a Fowler or drop down flap. There's obviously different aerodynamic characteristics. And then the rest of this is just gonna be pretty much nonsense. And then you can read the Chinese version if you want. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this manual, we're gonna point it right to the page we want, which is here, and we will lay this aside as we go ahead and do the build. The build should be super easy. If you guys don't already have a plane stand might be kind of handy on this model. Our plane stand is a Robart plane stand. It's nothing particularly special about this, but if you ever need supplies that we talk about on this channel, then you can check them out on brianphillipsrc.com/supplies, or you can just go to brianphillipsrc or bprc.me, and you should be able to find it quite easily because it is right there at the top. Okay, go ahead and grab me the horizontal stabilizer, please. And actually, why don't we do the prop first? Grab me the prop.
Okay.
Now, if you're an inexperienced builder, wait to put your prop on. We're pretty experienced builders. We know what we're doing. That doesn't mean that we can't make a mistake. I'm gonna just twist a little teeny bit with the prop until this allows me to align it. There's a certain amount of play on that, and then once you get it on there, you should be able to just get that down. Once you get it centered, it'll go without any pressure, okay? Because once you see how this has that hex shape to it, so you gotta line that hex up with this hex, okay? Please be careful of that, hon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna pop off this canopy, see if there's anything I can do to reach inside. There's no way for me to reach inside of here. I'm just trying to hold the motor still as I do this, and I'm having a little bit of trouble because this thing is not quite perfectly aligned, and so it doesn't want to drop back down in there. There it goes. I pushed it. I just pushed hard. Okay, so it's nice when you can put your hands up in here, you can kind of hang on to the plane without damaging the foam. If you try to grab this really hard and push on there, you might damage something. Okay, and when I say damage, I mean like superficial, you know, you're gonna make some beauty marks in there. Okay, so now I don't need to try to work hard to hold this, but I can tell you this, I don't have much to hold on to with this, okay? So as I turn this on, there is a little bit of a hex drive. So camera crew, if you could hand me the screwdrivers, please. And then you need to make sure you're not hitting that, please. All right, so I'm gonna lay this down. Over there, we'll put that. 7mm is too big. I am curious if we can even drive with this. I don't think we'll be able to. That's 5, so let's try 4. We may not have the right size either. Nope, too small. So that would probably be like a 5mm if it was anything. I don't know that that's anything more than decorative though. But because it's keyed on, this is basically just holding it in place, okay? So we don't need to worry a lot about it. It's not gonna matter. It's gonna be held in one way or another, okay? And before we mount all the wings and stuff, I wanna talk about right here, show the people, what do we have?
The yellow wire.
Velcro.
Oh, Velcro.
What do we use Velcro for?
Shelf liner.
Yep, so if you have a battery, I'm gonna give you 2 examples of batteries. Now, they didn't mention the C rating when I was looking, okay? We have a 2200 4S, 2200 4S. One's a smart battery, one is a regular battery. It's like China Hobby line, and then this would be like a smart Spectrum battery. So as you can see, they're both pretty slick. They slide easy. So what we like to do is we'll use the shelf liner. Ours happens to be solid. We have links to this sort of stuff too if you need it, if you can't find it. But what happens is once you put a little downward pressure in there, it just stops it from slipping and sliding, okay? And this stuff works really nice because then it doesn't let the glue through. So we happen to use this style. So what I like to do before I get too far in the build is obviously do not cut your hand off. This has an XT60 for the electronic speed control, the ESC, which is down in there. Camera crew's gonna throw that away, please. And then second thing we gotta do is we're gonna go ahead and get this peeled out. Now, all the wires are just kind of slopped in here. Should be no big deal to figure out here in a few minutes. And like camera crew was talking about, there is a yellow wire, which is gonna be a thrust reverse. But we have just learned that on the 40 amp ESC, sometimes, especially in the EDFs, we have issues with them. We may not on this particular plane. Okay, so we take the Velcro out. We will show you how to set it up more than likely if we have enough available channels, and we should have enough available channels. I'm not sure we will, so we may not, okay? So we have this tape. We can use that as tape. We can stick it on there, and you're probably thinking, well, there's already a cut seam there, Brian. Yeah, we can either do that or we can go here. So we'll just go here, okay? And this stuff is so cheap, it's like $10 or $11 for a roll of it, and you'll use the roll for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of planes.
Yeah, we're on like our second roll.
Yeah. Yeah, but we didn't even use up our whole first roll,
no.
Camera crew. Okay, so this is just gonna sit down here. And then I can just take my scissors and just a little tiny bit bigger than the actual Velcro. And then if your battery doesn't fit exactly where it's expected to fit, you'll be fine, okay? So super, super easy. Now, if you don't have Velcro, like say it's on a balsa wood tray or something like that, you can also glue this down using China glue. Now, if you don't know what China glue is glue that is, and that's not meant to be like some sort of a negative thing, but we call it China glue because that's what it is, okay? China glue is like a mucilage-based product. It looks a lot like rubber cement, but it's not gonna be reactive with the foam. Ours obviously has a couple of stickies on there. This is what you get from FMS. If you're ordering one of the receivers that we recommend, you can order this. This is a Horizon product, or they sell it. It's just one of the offerings they have. It's not their brand or anything like that. But just depending on which website you're ordering from, we find that the China glue is just slightly better. It edges out the foam to foam, but only slightly. They're both good foam glues. They both work good. They don't cause problems. The aluminized tubes are kind of a pain because they kind of like hold their shape. So sometimes you'll take off a cap, you get a little bit of a mess going on, okay? So just be careful before you get too squeezy because it will empty the entire, well, not the entire tube, but where you squeeze to. And then you gotta put this lid back on and it kind of makes a mess. But when it comes to the China glue from FMS, you pierce your own opening. And with this one, you don't open it yourself. It comes like this out of the package. And dollars to donuts, they're almost exactly the same price. You get a little bit more with this package, but you have a little bit higher ticket price. So we like this China glue. So either way, like I said, to all their own. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Speaking of our cat, look on the cat on the oven.
Is she behind the box?
She's behind the oven. She's on the oven.
Colby.
Come over here. What are you doing? What are you doing? Get out of there. That's an oven. That's like a
This is her way of making sure she doesn't get attacked.
So anyway, so this is gonna go in here. So we'll kind of fold this a little bit. We'll slide this under and we can manipulate the exact position when we get to that point, but I'm just gonna slide it through and just stick it back down. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this thing put together the rest of the way. Now that we've talked about the shelf liner, we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna take two of these long screws, 3 millimeters by 32, okay? So it's gonna go back here. It should be a pretty easy process. Just remember, there is an up and a down, and the only way you can really tell is by color in this case, for sure, and then by fit. So if you put it in there, it doesn't feel like it's right, it's not right, okay? Super easy build, drop it in there, it's gonna go perfectly into position, then you're gonna drop your screws in, and these screws are gonna reach through to the nutser, which is what we noticed earlier. You can also tell that the red matches the kind of the bottom, the predominant color on the bottom of this plane. Really high contrast in colors from top to bottom, so that should help with visual orientation as you're flying this model. Does not feel like it's lined up just quite yet. Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like it's going. I'm gonna try this one. It seems like a really long screw. Okay, so that's in there. Oh, that one's going. I believe it's going. There it goes. Now I got it. Now, once this starts to go, you're gonna notice it's gonna pull this foam tight to one another. Once you start getting tight, you'll notice some puckering. And usually when you start seeing puckering, that means you're good enough and you can move this elevator, make sure there's no separation in that gap there. Okay, so that's getting pretty good and tight. And then this one, for whatever reason, it is not wanting to drop down in, but I think I just need to work the tip so I can just kind of move it back and forth a little bit until it starts, but it just is not wanting to start. I don't know if I don't maybe have the alignment exactly right. By the way, if you have to take apart your planes for transportation, most people are not going to take the tail section apart, but I can definitely tell you this one is kind of fighting me. We used to have this problem all the time on planes, but the jigging is so much better anymore. I'm going to try to pull this screw out if it doesn't go. Still not going. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. There's really only kind of one way to put it. Yeah, it's definitely not in there. So I'm gonna try pulling it out. If you can't get it out, the other thing you can do is flip the plane upside down and it'll drop right out. But what I wanna show the people is right now from this angle. See how there's a gap there? Mm-hmm. It's acting like maybe it's not totally all the way up in there. That might do it. Let's see if that does it. And by the way, be careful of this antenna. You can adjust this plane stand by just kind of squeezing it together. But if you have a brand new one, you'll have to put some sort of like a baby powder or talcum powder or whatever along there, and it will make it way better for sliding along there. Otherwise, they bite hard. Okay, we're just gonna try this again. It's just evidently just catching the edge. Oh, got it finally. That's the most we've struggled to get an FMS model screw put together for a long time. Now I gotta say, that's one of the things that FMS does a really nice job of, is usually fit and finish is really good. Now I could definitely say there's definitely some movement there lengthwise. You see that lateral movement? That's not good. But there again, you're only gonna pivot the plane with the elevator. It's not like you're, you know, braced to get some firm surface. When you're in the air, all this stuff is one big piece. Man, it's just, it's tightening, but it's not, it's not feeling like it's totally torqued down. There it goes. Now we're getting there. Oh yeah, that's in there. Okay, good. All right, so now after we're done with that, we have to pass the wing wiring through before we can drop the rest of the 4 screws. And we are notably not installing this yet, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is, on the control arm of the servo, it wants it on the second hole down. Can you come over here so they can see this? The second hole down is right here. See, it's the second hole down. So this is the only side we control. This side is already, no, it's not. We have to put it in the outside too. Okay, so the second hole down, and we're just gonna let this hang low, okay? So you have to kind of line this up visually and see if it's gonna be right. This little zigzag is where it's gonna sit. This is gonna get turned so it's like that, so that it can hook into this. It's gonna be in the outermost, and then we're gonna go in one hole on the servo. So then push it in, give it a twist, and then this will eventually go there. But we don't know if this is centered, so we're just gonna assume it's not, and I'd rather have that dangling down for our build. But just remember, if you forget to put that in, you're gonna crash your plane, 100% guaranteed. So the next thing I have to do is cut a singular zip tie. There's a zip tie that holds all the wires from that little breakout board, which is actually kind of like a little plastic box. And yeah, this has to go up inside. So I'm just gonna cut that one zip tie. And then these are gonna go upstairs into the rest of the plane. Now, if you guys are using a reflex, this would be the time where you would start thinking about where you're gonna mount it. Reflex is the offering for the stabilizer. It's an external stabilizer from FMS. In our case, we're gonna be using AS3X and Safe. So just kind of getting all these wires so that the memory is out of the cables. But we gotta get this stuff all through the hole, okay? So I'm just kind of guiding it with my fingers. Once we get close, we just need to make sure that they all drop down, because you don't wanna pinch like a big bundle of them in that opening. And then my breakout box is wanting to fall down. Yep, it is. So we got to pull it out and address that. Okay, so if your breakout box likes to break free like that, like what happened to ours, I'm going to untangle this crap here. Yeah, this is just so sloppy.
Does it matter if the breakout box is mounted?
No, except that it's a pain to work with otherwise. Okay, so right here, we've got ailerons, we've got gear, and we've got flaps, okay? But like there's a flap servo right there. Do we really need it? It's just basically a handful of Y cables. That's all it really does. And then here's what I really don't understand. Okay, why is one of these hooked up to that and not the other two? They should all be hooked up. Because if these are LEDs, why the heck would you carry those into the fuse? That's totally dumb. See this, guys? Let's just fix this right now. Because when you hook this up, it's going to, they've really messed this up. There's no reason why you wouldn't steal power from another port. These breakout boards are not like actual ports. They're just like, you know, little split out boards.
So you could steal your power there and not have to plug it in somewhere else.
Yeah, like it's not even a question why you would ever do that. That's so dumb. So then this, you can see where the positive and negative is, because if you line up all these wires, the negative is down, I'm gonna unplug this and just twist it once. And then I'm gonna put it underneath the flap wire. So that's the other thing. You guys may decide you want to just eliminate that little breakout box altogether, because on this plane, there's just no huge reason for it. So you want the positive to be in or up in this case. Did I unplug that maybe? I don't think I did.
You did.
So then plus is going up here. And then plus is going to be going up here as well. And see, I'm just doing cable management 101. Okay, so we got black going that way. So black is going to be down. Okay. So once those are all landed, and why is everything so jankety? That's so weird. It's unusual. They want to make these builds super short. I'm all about making builds short, but you got to get the job done right, folks. And guess whose responsibility it is to get it right? It's definitely not the camera crew's, it's mine. If I'm the pilot, it's mine. If you're the pilot, it's yours. Pull these things flat, get that nasty silicone crap off of there, that white stuff. Then pull this flat, get it all neat. No reason not to have it neat. It's bad enough having to chase all this crap through the fuse. You don't want to be fighting it too. And then the gear, of course, meaning retracts, not gear door or anything like that. Okay, so then all this stuff needs to get managed at some point. You can see all that white stuff that's coming off of there. And there's like sticky here. It's just double-sided tape. So if your double-sided tape fails you like it did me, I think this actually needs to go that way. Is the hole offset?
It is, but it's offset favoring.
Okay, just hold on. You can go through the center though. I'm gonna China glue this. Guys, China glue is one of these things where you don't need it, but you'll want it from time to time. So I'll show you the China glue right now. So China glue is, I'm gonna hold mine in this way. You can actually, I think it might've been this way when we started because you can see where the paint was. They had it that way, but why do I want all the wires to come out the side like that?
Right.
That's gonna be on the edge of the hole. I'd rather just twist it back this way and just make it walk out straight up, right? That's the way, except you might not be able to fit those wires in there because they designed it that way. So these extra wires here, they need to be managed better.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do a little something right now. I'm gonna just take these wires. I'm just gonna figure out how long each one is, make sure there's not some huge tangle. Like, why is that so jankety? Good Lord. The brown is down, it's 1 port away, okay? And why are they labeled on this side? Like, isn't that pretty obvious? There's like a wire going right to the flap. Okay, don't understand that. Okay, so brown is down. So I have to rotate that just a little bit. It's 1 set of pins away and just pressing it. I don't even know where all this stuff breaks out to. It doesn't matter. It's mostly just Y cables that are just housed in a box instead of having a bunch of ugly Y cables. But if you do this couple of minutes worth of cleanup, this is gonna be next to the next one. There's gear. Again, why are they labeled? That is so weird. I mean, it's nice that they're labeled if you were tearing out and not using this box, but your average Joe is using the box because they've included it, right? Okay, so now that they're all back in their place, you see what I'm doing? It's just 1 wire at a time. I'm just getting the excess. Once you have the excess secured, you can do whatever you need. And what I need to do is I need to get some China glue in here so it can start cooking off. And if you don't know what cooking off means, what I mean is it's chemically reacting with the air, okay? So now I'm gonna take and I'm just gonna dip this down into the glue that's cooking off, okay? I'm not even gonna worry about it gluing yet. I'm just spreading it onto the apparatus, okay? And then I'm gonna let this sit for a minute. It's just gonna chill while I go get a zip tie. Now let it expose to air so that you can actually let that get tacky. Once it's tacky, it's gonna stick together. It's gonna be a good outcome for you. If you don't let it tack up, then it's like, you know, probably not gonna be great. I'm gonna grab 3 zip ties, hoping that we need 1 of them, maybe. These are just gonna be small black zip ties, okay? So nothing too fantastic. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Now, once this tacks up to the point where you can stick it down and it'll stay, it will stick down and stay permanently. Okay, see that? Oh, look, it says light 651, whatever the heck that means. Okay, so it says light, then 651. You guys see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is held down almost enough to where I can barely get it undone. Now, you can ball this up if you want, or you can tie it up if you want. I really don't care which direction you do it, but my suggestion, as with most things aviation related, would be to keep it tidy, because tidy makes it easier to service if you have to get in there and work on it later. It's gonna be less confusing, okay? So I'm just kind of working this into a nice loop. And once I get that loop, then I can double it back down so that it goes down in here. And you guys are probably thinking, but didn't you just cut that zip tie free? Well, yes, I did, but you have to remember, guys, the zip tie I cut was holding the wires I needed too, okay? So now that that's down in that little area, I can just keep holding it with my fingers, or I can start a zip tie. In this case, I'm gonna start a zip tie. I'm gonna go all the way down on top of the bundle of wires, like that, you see? Then that's gonna make a nice little neat place to hold everything together. It doesn't need to be ultra tight. You just need to be tight enough to hold it in position, okay? So then that becomes a unit of wiring. It's also semi-serviceable in that I can pull the zip tie off of the end. But you don't want to go so tight that you break the pins or you make it so that it can't hang on. And when we stick this into the plane, these are all going to come up so that you can get to them. It'll be nice and neat. So some might suggest a second zip tie here. I have gotten away from using too many more zip ties than absolutely necessary because I found that it almost always causes difficulty later in the build process. Okay, and I didn't torque that tighter with my side cutters like I oftentimes do, okay? All right, so and still want to walk around a little bit, but I think that's just the looseness of the foam, because this thing, I mean, the glue is strong enough I can just about pick it up. So I'm just gonna rock it a couple of times and just see if I can encourage that glue to stick just a little bit better, because I could have let it cook off just a little while longer. Okay. Remember, this is not gonna be a structural component. We're gonna have it screwed on in like 2 minutes, okay? All right, so now that we have that, we can definitely flip it upside down, no problem, but we need to point it the right direction, first of all. And then second of all, this needs to feed down through the opening. And once it's through the opening, we should have a heck of a lot easier time getting this wing on, because everything is nice and tidy, except for one wire's fighting me.
I can see them.
Yep, so I'm dropping it down in there, and then super easy install, just put 4 screws in. Remember, this is a 10-minute build.
I mean,
10-minute build, guys.
it's pretty easy.
This is an easy build, but it is in 10 minutes.
Well, it's not your 10 minutes.
Yeah, so if you guys are okay with leaving everything, for lack of better terms, half-assed, it's 10 minutes, okay? But that's not the way we do it on Brian Phillips RC. The truth is, we build these planes because we know they're gonna be flying right next to my face holes, and I don't want them to hit those face holes. Also, pretty bad match on color here, I must say. For being painted and jigged, I'm disappointed by that. I think it's overspray from the blue. It's gotta be. Because it looks like the paint is the same color, but it's more the same color inboard, okay? See that? I went a little bit too much, and you don't really get to put the genie back in the bottle on something like that. So when you guys are tightening, just be a little bit careful not to overdo it. You wanna look for puckers around the edge of these plastic inserts. That's gonna be your telltale sign. You see how it's starting, and it just kind of comes up on you all at once within the last couple of quarters of a turn. But I don't like when planes have a weak connection between the fuse and the wing, because that's kind of like a critical structural component. I would rather have a dent here than have a wing that makes a dent in the side of my face holes, like we just talked about. Okay, so we have 1 extra screw, and that'll be useful for something else, or if you need to touch up, fix a repair plane, something like that later. you'll have that in your tool bag. So we should be done with screws. That was a very easy build, okay? Nice looking plane. Very limited amount of wiring to deal with now, because really the only wiring we had to mess with would have been the wiring to get it through the wings. And then I think it's gonna be a relatively simple process getting everything else through. Now, that being said, we're pretty much ready for radio setups. This has been a very quick and easy build. I gotta say, 1200 millimeter size class is a great size class. If you guys are thinking, you know, I want bigger, I understand what you're thinking, but I need to remind you about something. 1200 millimeter warbirds are some of the most popular because you're just getting big enough that you can do retracts, you can do LEDs, you can fit some of these scale flap features. But if you go less than that, there are a few that have retracts, flaps, and so on and so forth, but they just have to fly too fast to actually be right, in my opinion. And so I really like when you step up into this 1200 millimeter warbird size or regular general aviation or whatever it is. That's not to say that there aren't some planes that are in this size class that are maybe EDFs and maybe aren't, like they leave us something to be desired still, but we usually don't size EDFs by the wing dimension or the length. We size those by the actual power system. So like a 90 millimeter EDF, an 80 millimeter EDF, a 70 millimeter EDF, or 64, 50, 40, 32, 30, 28 millimeters. Those are the sizes that we've done over the years, okay? And they go up to like 100, I think it's like 110, and they have some huge EDFs anymore. So it's very cool because we have better battery technology than just 10 years ago or so when we started doing this. We're 9 years deep on the YouTube channel. We just got this like birthday wish from YouTube. Totally automated. I mean, there's no human involved.
It's really special.
It's really heartwarming. Okay, all right, great. So getting back to our next step. So obviously we have these wires that need to be landed and or managed. And you can see it's just kind of just a giant mess, basically. There's 3 wires that go to the rudder. Why? Steerable? Oh, they steal the light controller. Now, I'm just gonna tell you this right now. I am so glad I landed those wires. You wanna know why? Because they wanted stupid flashing lights out here. Dumb.
Yeah, probably.
Don't do that. You want a regular light, then you don't wanna hook up to this. This is a flashing mechanism. Almost certainly, and we're gonna confirm that here in just mere moments. Also, let's talk about this real quick. We have an XT60 wire. And yes, XT60s are designed to work with XT60s, but in our case, a lot of times we're using IC3 or EC3. So this happens to be an IC3 on a Gen 2 smart pack. So this has a smart automatic discharge, automatic balancing in flight, and then during charging, so you don't need the balance lead. And then there's a data line that carries data. Of course, that's not gonna hook to anything, but you can physically plug this in. Now with an XT60, you don't have to worry about hooking these backward because they're hard enough to do forward. But with an XT90 and an IC5 or an EC5, EC would be blue and doesn't have the data pin. It's a little bit less stout. I hate EC connectors. I love IC connectors, they're very good, okay? With a 90, to an EC5 or an IC5, you can hook them up backward, so use caution. I've only done it one time and I did manage to save the ESC, but it was by a miracle, okay? So we'll come right back. All right, so now that we've talked about the battery a little bit, we do plan to use one or the other, whether it be a China Hobby line or it be a Spectrum. This is a 50C, this is a 30C. Now, they make higher C and they make lower and higher C in both of these brand varieties, but we just wanted to let you know that's kind of our target. So what we'll do is we'll link to batteries for you to choose. Now, keep in mind, when you look at a plane in our video description below, you're gonna see that there is a place for the plane, a place for the battery, a place for the transmitter, and a place for the receiver. And so in our case, the receiver is the next big ticket item. We know we're gonna use the NX10 to set up this model. Like I said, we have our previous model on here, which we can't talk about just quite yet. It's already been released, so what difference does it make? But down here, I'm just gonna show you these different options, okay? So let's take a seat for a second here. We've got the 8260T, and we've got the AR 620. Now the 620, of course, will be far inferior and quite a bit cheaper than this. This is gonna give you pack telemetry pack voltage telemetry, so you know how much is left in the can. But my experience with prop-driven warbirds is that you're gonna fly them once or twice and you're pretty much gonna know what you got. However, if you've got an EDF-powered warbird, there's a bigger disparity in flight times because if you get on it really hard, you're gonna chew through pack really fast. Whereas with the prop-driven, you tend to have a lot more efficiency. So this plane might say this is a waste of time to do that, and that's what we're gonna lean toward today. Now, these are unstabilized receivers, so if you're using a Reflex V3, of course you can use a Reflex V3, it's a Bluetooth version, and this is what it looks like, and you would set that all up, and you'd be hunky-dory, right? Great, but that's gonna limit you from doing flap runs if you decide to do flap runs. I don't know why you do flap runs on this particular plane, because we have an inboard flap, and just keep in mind, I'm not using this, I'm not showing how to use it in this plane, and I'm not gonna show generally how to use it. Here's why. We're Spectrum guys, we like Spectrum, we've had good experience. That doesn't mean you can't use Spectrum plus Reflex, but we've done plenty of plug-in flies that have the Reflex equipped. Evidently you can tip this thing. But in this case, we're gonna lean toward AR631. A 637T would also do the same thing. It would give you this additional cable. So if you want his AS3X and safe, we have updated our firmware to get us into AS3X Plus. The new ones are just gonna have a plus on there for AS3X Plus. And then this is, of course, also been updated. This is the AR8360T. And you're probably saying, why do you keep showing us all these options, Brian? Well, the reason we're showing these options is so that you understand that they exist. In fact, I gotta get the AR637T. All right, so I should have showed this in the lineup, but I didn't. AR637T. So you notice the body size is more similar to this. The new ones are flipped upside down in the package, but they're exactly the same as long as you update the firmware to the latest and greatest. We went through and updated all of our stuff to the latest and greatest. Now, this firmware technically can be updated too, but it doesn't matter because the new firmware doesn't matter for us for what we're doing because we don't have AS3X and safe on this or this. This is 6 channels, this is 8. And you're like, why would you need 8 channels on this plane? Well, you've got throttle, elevator, rudder, in no particular order, ailerons as a pair, and flaps.
And retracts.
Retracts. So that's 6 channels. Why would you need 8 channels if you want to use a provided thrust reverse? Okay, thrust reverse can be plugged in to this individual yellow wire right here. So when and if you get a Predator ESC that comes equipped with thrust reverse, this is going to be signal only. And that white is signal, and then the red and black are in parallel. So when you plug this into your receiver, so it's port 1, port 2, it'd be like that. You would just plug that in. The yellow would go only into the signal because that's all you need is a signal. They already have the, they already have the reference point, which is ground and power coming from the ESC. And so really all it needs is signal, okay? So the circuit board is all on the same circuit board, but that would require a second channel. Well, we've already used up all our channels, so unless you want to tie thrust reverse to something else, which would be a terrible idea, and I'm not going to show you how to do that, then don't do that, okay? Now, that being said, if you were to set up an AR8360T, you could set up flaperons, you could separate out from that little breakout box, you could do left and right ailerons separate. I am not doing that, there's no reason to do it, but you could set up reflex where you have spoilerons that go up and flap that goes down, and you could really slow this thing down even better. My suggestion is, if you really want to slow down with this, you would also have thrust reverse available, okay? It's probably gonna work on this better than some of the EDFs that we've done of recent vintage in the 40 amp ESCs from Predator, okay? But I want to show you our thinking process is this. If you're using the reflex, you use one of these two, you'll get all the features. You can also get one that looks just like this, that doesn't have stabilization. I believe it's called an AR it's a 6210.
Yeah.
6210T, and then that would give you the red and black wire where you can plug in your telemetry for pack voltage right there, but it's cheaper. And that would give you the Vario as well, which you don't need the Vario in this plane, okay? So then you could still be 6 channels. But again, if you're gonna spend that kind of money, just go up to this, get all the or go up to this, get all the features, right?
Right.
This is the middle of the road. And so where we're gonna land is you can also get a 630, it's like $5 cheaper, and it just has end pins and no external antenna. So it's actually shaped a little bit more like this. but it would be down here, cheaper than the next most. We're gonna use this one. This is gonna give us AS3X Plus in this case, because we've updated the firmware, and safe, so auto leveling. This is gonna give us all the features we need. We're not gonna have pack telemetry, but we will have some limited telemetry on here for receiver voltage, because we can measure that from the onboard circuitry. Doesn't really do us that much good, to be honest, but if we ever upgraded this receiver to an avian ESC, then we can use one of the unpluggable higher channels to control it, because now on the NX10 we have 20 channels, on the NX8 we have 20 channels, on the NX6 we have 14 channels, on the NX7E we have 14 channels, okay? So again, if you ever switch to the avian, that'll all pass through the connector that goes directly to this. You can do multiple channels worth of control through that one channel. All right, so that's a lot of information for those of you that don't know the Spectrum lineup. That's where we're gonna end up landing, pun intended, is with the 631. This is also gonna give us just slightly longer range, even though Spectrum claims that the inboard or built-in antennas are gonna give you the same amount of range. This 620 has an inboard, onboard antenna, so there is no external antenna, okay? Makes sense. Hopefully we answered all your questions and we gave you a good enough rationalization that you can trust us. Now trust us. At Brian Phillips RC, we want to give you guys the best bang for the buck, and we're going to talk about the features that we think you need. Now, that doesn't mean that you might not be in an environment where you need a little bit more. You don't want to fly-by telemetry. You want full range telemetry. Then you would jump up to the 637. But you're like, I really want thrust reverse, and I want to set up reflex. Okay, then go to the 8360T. But just to give you an idea, there's a pretty big bump in price from the 631 up to the AR637T. And it's only like a $15 more for this, okay? So if you go into this, you might just as well get this. But this plane's price point is gonna demand that most people are gonna end up at a 630 or 631. Now, there's nothing wrong with the 630 in this environment, in my opinion, but we just happen to not have a 630 in stock. So we're gonna go with a 631 today. And full disclosure, like I said, we updated our firmware. If you have one that's still sitting in the package and you need to update your firmware, I highly recommend AS3X Plus locks these planes in. But there are features that we're not gonna be taking advantage of in this smaller, more simple, lesser sophisticated plane. And full disclosure, the AS3X Plus really comes into its own when you start talking about jets and EDFs and really complex wing types and stuff like that, okay? Because if you can split out your steerable nose wheel all of a sudden, this becomes really handy. Now, let's talk about that for 2 seconds. If you went to the AR8360T, you could split out your steerable nose wheel and you could have steering stabilizer that's actually greater gain than the rudder. How would you do that? And we're not gonna do that on this plane because I don't think it's practical, okay? You would take this wire, and you can tell this one goes up to the steerable and this one goes to the rudder. Pretty obvious because it's going to that rudder, and you can tell it's going out to the push rod that goes to the rudder. Then they steal power for the LEDs. Fine, whatever. I don't care. That just happens to be the way that they chose to do that. You could also feed that through the wing and just split off from the breakout board if you wanted to, okay? If you don't want it flashing, but this flash controller will also give us that flash control. You could also disconnect this here and go down to that breakout board, which actually, you can still kind of maybe get to it if you're careful, but we're not gonna do that today, okay? So again, to be clear, one of the additional features, rather than crow, maybe you use that extra channel for your steerable nose gear, and then you can do a delayed additional amplitude, so it's not running stabilizer while it's inboard. With this system, it's gonna be running the stabilizer. Every time that there's a correction for the rudder, it's gonna correct up here on your retract. With that, you're gonna lose that correction here while you're in flight until the gear are deployed, and it's got a time delay for how long it takes. It's all built in, it's very easy to set up, and then it will stabilize with a higher amplitude on your steerable nose gear, okay? So if you decide to do that, that's great. We've done that on the Super Scorpion so far and the Avanti 90, they're both 90s. Our Super Scorpion is an 8S setup, and our Avanti is a 6S setup, okay? So we answered hopefully all your questions on why we picked that. We're gonna take a second, clean up all the stuff we're not using, and come right back. All right, so 631 it is. We're gonna get this thing wired in, and once it's wired, we're gonna figure out a spot we can mount it. But sometimes the dictation of exactly where things reach is where you're gonna put it, okay? So as you can see, we've got gear, we've got flaps, we've got ailerons. Okay, so that's kind of weirds me out because how is that gonna work? We do not have, do we have to plug the gear in down there on that breakout board? Because that's gear right there. And then this is gear. So where's the Y cable? Did they not give us a Y cable? That's rudder. I'm not sure. There's ailerons, there's flaps. So obviously flaps, we don't have to Y off on that at all. But this gear may need to actually land into that wing plug.
Do you want me to look at the directions while you're looking at the cables?
No, I don't. We'll look at it together and come right back. All right, so in our case, I can see the gear here, right there, 1, 2. That says gear, that says gear. So I'm assuming that this one's gonna, they're expecting us to slide that in there. So I'm gonna slide this back, and because it's a hard reach, I'm gonna grab forceps. If you guys don't see us use forceps, it's because you haven't watched us do these Unbox build radio setups very many times. We use forceps in almost every build. This is another tool that you should definitely have in your tool bag. The bent tips are the ones we use more frequently. I don't know why, they just seem to work a little bit better for us. So yeah, so we're actually plugging in to that hole right there, guys.
Is the light okay?
The light's fine, okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna take this and flatten this wire. I'm gonna walk it back so that I can get that bend out of it, okay? Then I'm gonna take this, and I know where the brown is. The brown needs to go away from us. And so I'm gonna just grab it at the very, very tip top, but I don't wanna clamp it on the wires and damage them, so I'm on the plastic housing, okay? Then I'm gonna slip this down in there. You need to come in front of me because you're shadowing my work, like that, okay? Thank you. Otherwise I can't see. So I'm just gonna pull this apart and just try to get it between those two servo connections. It's definitely awkward. There we go. Okay, so we're in. So now I'm gonna let go of my bite, and I'm just gonna slip this in by pressing on the outside of the housing. So now that should give us the gear action, okay? Then this gear from the wing, the aileron and flap from the wing are all gonna go into the receiver. Then we have some extra wiring to deal with. This is for the serverless retract. And I'm actually, just for grins, I'm gonna pull this back out. I don't know, I could try to just tidy it up back here. I'm trying to decide which spot I wanna do it, because this thing is gonna be obviously not needed for what we're doing anymore. So now that we've got the wiring, I'm gonna go a couple of turns. I'm gonna see if I can tuck it down in here and just kind of get it out of the way, but not damage anything. Yeah, that worked pretty good. Okay, then we've got, this is just cable management 101, folks. We're just working through the process of plugging everything in so that we can, oh geez, look at this. This goes down under the battery tray, and then look how much they give us. There's not enough lead to go up front, so we gotta work with what we've got. I know I just shadowed the work. Hopefully that's not too bad. The 2200 milliamp battery is gonna go in here, almost certainly. Let's see if these are freed. Oh yeah, they're freed, but just barely. What I mean by freed is, do they slip through? They do, but just barely. And this is a type you can rip, so you gotta be kind of careful, okay? So it's like a medium duty strength on that. Also, because we know we're not using the thrust reverse, we'll just leave that where it is. Can we clean this up at all? That's the next question. Because I don't like where that wire comes out of the servo. And look how they did that. That is so janky. It's like, gotta be putting some nasty pressure on that. And this is not like an optional surface. Well, I guess it is a rudder. And look, they even have a chase there. It looks like for the servo wire. And they didn't put it in the chase. So that means the only way to really fix that would be to take this off, unplug this, slide it under the plastic, through that opening right there, that opening that they obviously didn't know existed, and then pop back out. Maybe they just decided it was a waste of time. I don't know. There's nothing I love more than redoing things that the factory should have done. Then we have the elevator, which is here. We got plenty of length. I was nervous that was going to be too short, but we need to make sure that that wire, if you go to the other side behind me over my left shoulder, shine the camera down here. You got to be careful about this because this is going around the rudder here. And so when you stick your head down here, I'm going to block your view. It needs to go above the rudder like that, okay? And then we have to do something to secure it in such a way that it's not going to interfere with this moving part, right? So you see all this crap has to be dealt with. That has to be dealt with. Ugh, it's going to be messy. And we don't have that much room for improvement, okay? Because by the time we're done with all this, you know, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just double this back onto itself. See how I did that? Just double it back onto itself. And then we're going to get ready to stuff this down in there.
Is the receiver going next to the rudder servo?
I don't know. Sorry, I got to trade you spots again. This is killing my back today. Okay, so I'm going to just try to... 10-minute build, guys. This is technically radio setup now, though. And if you use a reflex, you're going to have, you know, just different set of circumstances. Not necessarily easy or not necessarily harder, but you're going to definitely get better results from the AS3X and AS3X Plus for sure. Okay, so stuffing that down in there. Stuffing this down in there. Gosh, that is a nightmare. Once it's in there, I think we're going to be golden though. And that's just your light wire. Let's stuff this down in there too. Just got to be kind of careful. You don't want to have a bunch of wires coming undone here in a few minutes. So pushing that down in, now I've got rudder, I've got elevator, and that's where the elevator is going to be. That is not going to be very convenient at all. Not excited about that. See? Look, this is where the elevator is. That's all the slack we've got. So basically we know where we're going to have the receiver. It's going to basically be right there, okay? The throttle we're good on, the gear we're good on, the flaps we're good on, the ailerons we're good on, and the excess will get tucked back down into this cavity. But cable management's always a tricky part of this whole endeavor, okay? And if you think you're going to build a plane without any cable management, think again, okay? You got to cable manage or it's going to be a pain in the neck every time you try to plug in your battery, right? Because you got to get in there and plug it in, right? So now we're going to come back to that in just a minute. We have to set up our profile. So turn on your transmitter. In my case, mine's already on. I have to click cancel and back. It brings you to model select, okay? And then I'm going to go to add new model, okay? You can come around now. So at add new model, we can choose acro and we can create. It's going to take a minute because we have like tons of models in ours. That's a cool looking spinner. It's so weird and different, but I like that. Beautiful. Okay, so it's in the process of creating. When that pops up, then the reason we have to create a model first is so we know where to land our cables, okay? So while you're looking at this, yeah, definitely creating it, okay? So while we're looking at that, that says S, then it says plus, then it says minus. So it's on top of that, they silk screened or painted those 3 little bump outs for the characters. And that tells you which direction to put your wires into the Spectrum AR631. Now, we're not going to use that first one because that's bind program SRXL2, but then we are going to use ports 1 through 6 here, okay? So you're like, well, where do you land them? Well, we got to figure out how they're assigned. So we'll go model select, we just did. Model type was already set. Model name, this is where we type it in. So we can highlight, cancel, cancel, clears out the keys or clears out the characters. And now we're going to type for a minute off camera, CJ-6 V2. All right, so we've got the FMS CJ-6 V2 in 1.2 meters or 1,200 millimeters. Okay, so we'll hit back. Aircraft type, we need to set this to a single aileron and a single flap, and that speaks to the number of channels, not the number of servos. Okay, and then we're going to select an image, and I think they have like, probably P47 to be the closest, I'm guessing. Well, we could do an F4U Corsair too. Kind of torn. Probably that. We'll do the P47, okay? It looks close. And then flight mode setup, we're going to set that to switch D. So we exercise it and spoken flight mode. This is where we can set the 3 flight modes that are going to be active. In our case, using AS3X Plus is going to be on the top setting. Then we're going to use off, and then we're going to use safe for auto leveling, okay? So in that case, we're going to type in our labels, and our labels are going to be pretty straightforward, AS3X, and we'll come right back. All right, so artificial stabilization 3-axis, and then we'll scroll way down here and use this for the audio event. All right, so here's safe. Right after that, AS3X mode. Okay, then there's going to be this one. And just remember, these are just labels, folks. It's not actually the mode per se. Okay, so OFF for off. And then we'll go ahead and find off on here. All right, the word off. Okay, so we'll change flight mode 3, highlight cancel, cancel, and type in a safe. So sensor assisted flight envelope. And that's going to be where we set up our auto leveling. Of course, we'll do that through forward programming. So we'll show you the exact process. That's what we do on Brian Phillips RC. We show you every step so that you don't have to have a bunch of ambiguity. If you don't know why we're doing a particular step, I try my best to share it. But if you have questions, leave it in the comments below. I'll try to answer. But just do me a favor, if you're brand new to the hobby, watch the whole video first. Understand what we do, because you'll probably be ahead of me. Okay, so we have 3 switches set up. We'll leave it in AS3X mode. And then we'll go to channel assign. Okay, so normally they'd be retracts on A. We're going to use A for retracts. And then B is not going to be assigned to channel 7 because we're going to actually save that for flaps. But remember, we have 6 pluggable channels and everything else is available for us to use for anything we want. So in our case, we need to eventually set up flight mode somewhere. So we can either set it to switch D, doesn't matter which one it is. Let's set it to switch D, or you can actually go back to the beginning and it'll say F mode. So we'll do F mode for that. So that would be like whatever that auxiliary level number is. So probably aux 1 or 2. That's aux 3. So, and then the right knob, or the rotary knob rather, is right here. And so the R knob will already be assigned to channel 8, which should be like aux 3. Okay, I'm going to disassociate the left lever and the right lever. Those are back here on an NX10. I just don't use them for anything. And so if you guys are deciding between NX10 and NX8, right now we're just getting ready to finish up this NX10. We're almost out of model memory. Then we're going to switch back to an NX8. And you can see it really gives you almost everything you need. The only difference is Hall effects sensors in the gimbals. And then, of course, these sliders. And I think this one might come with a 6,600 milliamp hour battery instead of a 2,000. But we'll always add that on an 8 when we get an 8. Okay.
You reassigned your left when you were.
I hit cancel. There we go. So inhibit. That just means inhibit, meaning we're not going to use it. Okay, so now we'll go back out and we'll go to, we'll let it boot. And since we're in radio setup, we'll go ahead and set up rates and expo. So switch F, 0, position 0 is going to be 5, then 10, and then 20. Now this is going to be in tandem with AS3X most of the time, or safe, depending on when how you're flying. Okay, so 90% rates. That's going to give us our normal starting point. Then we've got half as much expo, so twice as touchy, if you will. And then we've got more expo, which means it's less touchy, plus a little bit lower rates to make it even less touchy. That's how we're going to set those 3 for elevator, ailerons, and rudder, okay? So these are the primary flight control surfaces. It gives you somewhere to start. And then, of course, from the starting point, you can always make adjustments on the fly, but you don't have to go around searching for which switch is which. Remember, that's half the battle when you're flying. You have a starting point, you have an ending point. But the idea is you set the plane up in such a way that you can get it to the ground after a maiden, make necessary adjustments, and then go back and go forth and prosper, okay? So here's 20. And the rate's going to be dropped down to 90. Okay, so in this mode, both rudder or rather all rudder, elevator, and ailerons are going to be at 10. If we want more touchy, we go here. If we want less touchy, we go there. When we would land, let's say one of these needed to be less touchy, so then you would go to that mode. In this case, you would cut this up to, instead of 10, you do 20 here. Then you might do like 40 here and drop that down a little bit. And then you might set this to 10, because then you have that halving and doubling effect depending on where the stick is, but it's relative to one of the 3 control channels or control axis. So remember, when we fly a plane, we control pitch, roll, and yaw. And then sometimes we have flaps to help change all of it together at the same time to a certain extent, okay? All right, so then throttle cut, we're gonna definitely turn that on. Should be on by default if you ask me. So switch H is on. It changed to throttle stick. You definitely don't wanna assign a throttle stick. Okay, so there you can see the throttle stick is not controlling the throttle because there's no feedback on the monitor, but when that's off, we have full and ordinary throttle control. So we've got that set, that's always good. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do flap system, highlight inhibit, switch it to switch B. Now, because we don't know the position of the flaps yet, we're just gonna, I'm not sure how to do this. It should put it in the middle throw. And then it's an inboard flap, but it's a split flap. So I'm gonna just throw caution to the wind and set these right now. And the idea is we haven't actually made the changes to our neutral controls, meaning when we turn the system on, we don't have to physically hook up the linkage to the flap. So we can have this set right off the bat, but we just don't know which direction we want to drive it, okay? We are going to drive it at 2 seconds deployment speed, so when you deploy it, you can watch, you can watch the flaps change. They're not changing. Why? Because they're all set to 0. But then the elevator will change. See how it went to 6 to 9? Okay. All right, so we'll come back to that once we're all wired up. Now, we're going to set a timer on this one because we just don't know how long it's going to fly. Let's go with 5 minutes for now. We'll do 1 out active, so anything over 25% starts the timer. It continues to go until you hit clear. At 1 minute, I want a voice call out. At 20 seconds, I want nothing. At 10 seconds, I want a countdown, and then I want expiration to be a tone and vibrate with a tone every minute thereafter. Okay, so what do we have? We have all the different basic stuff set up. We want to make sure that we're not going to have our elevator, our gear come out into the foam. So we'll be pretty careful about that. And while I'm thinking about it, we're going to make that adjustment. So the mains are coming out of the wing, should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to get this pushed back so that it's right in the middle there. Are we on the mains now? Nope, we should be good still.
You are on that flap though, if it matters.
Oh, yeah.
We might have to make our stand longer.
I'm going to have to make the stand longer. So we'll just lay this out of the way for now. Carefully lay it down. These Robart stands are not that hard to adjust once you get a little bit of powder on these. So I've always found it easier to hold it on a hard surface and press, but just remember, if that was a wood table, you might damage your wood table. So be careful. So let's take this plane now and lay it back down, see how our gear, oh yeah, totally clear of everything.
Yep.
Just be careful about these exhaust ports, okay? And then also making sure your prop can spin. If it would start spinning real slow, or if it would spin up to speed, you have to secure the plane at some point. Right now, I'm not real super worried about that happening, but I am still gonna be mindful we haven't trusted anything yet because we haven't seen it work, okay? So coming around, I'm gonna scroll once to the right and you'll see this, whoops, why is it X plus first? Once to the right, throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, gear, flap. That's how we know how to land stuff now, okay? So what does that correspond to? Throttle corresponds to channel 1. So we'll just start plugging stuff in. So channel 1, we've got a Futaba color code. So it's white is signal, red and black is ground, red is power, or plus voltage DC. Okay, so that's plugged into channel 1. Channel 2 is ailerons, so I need to reach this one back here. I'm not sure exactly the best way to do this just quite yet, so we'll have to do a little cable management as we go. The brown is down, okay? So in this case, then we have to go to elevator. So elevator is over here. That's gonna be the hardest one, so we'll come back to that. Then we have rudder, which again is kind of short, so we'll probably come back to that. No, we're gonna come back to it. Then we have gear, so gear is 5, that's not unusual. But I do wanna make sure I don't have like a big nasty tangle in my cabling. So that's gonna go to channel 5, right? Mm-hmm. Oops. I'm just kind of holding this. Now remember, this receiver is spatially aware. Since we're not using the thrust reverse yet, I'm gonna actually separate that back just a little bit further, just get it out of the way. And then flaps. Flaps are going to be on, I'm gonna pull under there. It's gonna be on the last pluggable channel, and brown is down, okay? So the Futaba color code is red, white, and black, and then the Hextronics JR is gonna be orange, red, and brown. So just the lighter color is signal, and the darker color is like your ground here, okay? And then I need to get this thing into a physical position so that we can mount it. Now, it doesn't matter, we can mount it this way, we can mount it this way, we can mount it this way, we can even mount it upside down, but in our case, I wanna mount it in such a way that I can reach all the cables, and the elevator is gonna dictate where that goes, okay? So elevator is on channel 3, so I'm gonna pull this as tight as I can pull it while I'm plugging it in. I'm gonna go brown is up. That's channel 3, right? Mm-hmm. And then the rudder is gonna go to channel 4. So I may have a little bit of playing with cables here in a minute, but you can see it's getting to the point where it's kind of hard to actually manipulate this because we have to make sure that cable at some point gets secured up against the side somehow. So I think it's probably gonna go right here, okay? Yeah, that's about the only place it's gonna fit. And that is not a bad place, okay? As you can see, it fits, the antenna's not getting janked on really bad. And so that's where that's gonna go. It'd be nice if it could point back and we just put the antenna out the tail. Let's see if we can get lucky enough to do that. I just don't want it in the control surface movement area. Okay, you don't wanna kink this, guys. That's a coax cable. If you kink it, you'll break it, potentially. What?
That looks nice.
Are you saying ooh to where it looks, or what I was saying?
With the antenna going back, it looks nice, but...
Okay. I don't know why you moved. So we're just stuffing this down in here. And the gear wire is still fighting me, so I'm gonna see if I can get that twisted down in there. Looks like crap. Just cables going everywhere, tangled every which way. I'm gonna undo this. I'm gonna take that twist out. I gotta do this probably one at a time, folks. There we go. Got a lot less twist now. You see that? Once that top one is taken care of, then I think it's gonna be less critical, but it's still currently not ideal, but it's okay. See that elevator? If I go back, I can actually get that about here. We can still get to the bind button. You can hear it clicking now. And then hand me this bent tip. Thank you. I'm gonna just let that stick with just a little bit of friction fit. Just gonna grab this and see if I can get that to fall down in underneath. Now, why are we not hooking that up? Because I chose not to use a more sophisticated receiver, okay? Then also, I'm gonna stick this down here too, just to keep that tight and away from all the moving parts. So really, when I glue, I'm gonna put a little bit of glue on the bottom there. So in order to glue a receiver, you don't have to glue them. You can actually use double-sided tape if you're into that sort of thing. A lot of people insist on it, but I can tell you this from personal experience and installing hundreds of these receivers, it's rarely absolutely necessary because what is double-sided tape? It's glue applied to a piece of foam that's soft and supple, and then glue applied to the other side. In most of our, what we're doing, okay? So I'm gonna turn this. So China glue again from FMS this time. I'm just gonna go ahead and uncap my glue. And I'm gonna take this out and I'm gonna put a pretty liberal dose of that on there. Then I'm gonna press it into where I think I want it, and I'm gonna just work it back and forth and just kind of let it spread out a little bit. Now, in this case, I'm gonna just lay that down. I'm gonna take my Q-tip and spread that all the way around the necessary area, and then I'm gonna spread it again, just like this, okay? Then I'm gonna take and smear just a little bit of that rubber cement sort of consistency China glue right there. And I'm not gonna worry so much about getting this thing stuck down just quite yet, but I am gonna stick it in. That'd be the elevator lead. I am gonna get that stuck into the glue. That's not gonna hold it just quite yet. Well, it is kind of holding it already, but it's not gonna be very tacky. So once that sits there for a second, we can tack it in there again. Now I'm gonna let this come out, and I'm gonna work this glue to spread it a little bit more. And then I'm just gonna make sure that when I put my Q-tip down there, we have good, every surface that I can touch is gonna have just a little bit of that tackiness to it. And same thing down here. In fact, I'm gonna take, and I don't often do this, but just with those wires, that one wire makes me nervous. So I'm gonna put a little slather of it onto this Q-tip, and I'm gonna come down here. I'm gonna do two things. I'm gonna smear a little bit there, but I've got just so much of it, I'm not gonna smear it in both spots. Now I'm gonna smear it where the wire is gonna go, okay? Just painting it on like with a paintbrush. Then I'm gonna quite literally just pull this out and let it sit. Now, previously in our last rubber, not rubber, but our last China glue experience, we waited maybe not quite long enough. This time I wanna wait quite long enough because it's gonna make it a lot easier to hold in there. Now, how long is too long? It takes a long time for it to be too long because it will be so tacky that I can quite literally glue a wing on and be happy with it in minutes to fly, okay? We've done it before. People don't believe me until, well, I mean, I can usually hold up a plane by a horizontal stabilizer that's glued in minutes later. But the idea is you have to let it tack up. So resist the temptation to just push it together. What'll happen is it will relax. Sometimes you're in a pocket. It will actually shoot out like this because of surface tension. But if you let it dry and it's going into a tight pocket, you don't want to let it totally dry because you will bind as you're pressing it in and it will hold, but you'll be like 10% shy of full penetration. So you can let it dry, and if you let it dry too long, put a little bit of fresh on there and then slide it in, it will tack, okay? But this stuff here, I mean, I could probably stick it down right now. Give them a close-up shot of that. You can see what's happened with that stuff. It's starting to get really, you've got the stringiness there. The other thing you can do is you can take two of your surfaces and you can go stick, 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 and it'll eventually start like pulling strings apart, strings apart, strings apart, and then just stick, and you won't be able to get it apart. That is one way to do it. I don't like doing that with the receiver though. I want it in there, I want it good. And then stay there, camera crew. There is a trick if you need to get in there and service it. If you're used to using CA or kicker, this is CA, so it'd be like something you might use to glue things together. And then this is kicker or accelerant Instaset. This is a BSI product. They make other brands, just so you know. You can buy that stuff from our links in the video description below, by the way. Or that's actually at brianphillipsrc.com or bprc.me. You see it's like liquid, like water. That stuff will break down China glue. And it'll make this stuff set really quick. So I tell you that not to discourage you to use a particular brand or style of glue, but I will tell you this, I would never CA in a receiver. I would China glue because that stuff is rubbery and resistant to coming apart. Like this model is glued together with China glue, not CA. The two halves are stuck together that way. Okay, look, this is good now. Watch this. When I slide this in, it's going in once and that's all. You see it's resisting? Now I'm pressing it and I'm pushing it down and we're done. That's not coming out. I could probably pick up the plane by that. I'm not going to demonstrate because I don't want to tempt fate. But then I'm going to take this wire here and I'm just going to stick it into the stickum that we created. You see? Now we're 100% confident that that wire is not going to be a huge problem with getting all tangled up with this rudder push rod, okay? Now the other thing too is it's going to make it hard as heck to get in there and play with this receiver, but we shouldn't need to. And by the way, I'm just saying, look, I'm moving the whole plane stand and all. Now I'm not going to try to pick it up by that and yank all the wires out, but you guys get the idea. It works really good. Now, if you still want to use double-sided tape, go ahead, be my guest. You can do whatever you want. You don't ever have to listen to anything Brian Phillips RC says, but I do want to just give you one moment of encouragement. When you pan through our room, I'd be careful about panning too much, but just pan slowly. Maybe go a little quicker over the hot commodities, okay? We've done a lot of planes. And this is just one room. We have entire container full of planes. We have a basement full of planes. We have other rooms with planes. We have planes that are coming. We have planes that are in storage ready to go. We have new Unbox planes. We have done a lot of planes. So the little tidbits of advice we give you, it's not just like, hey, this might work. We've usually done most of it and to some level of success, varying levels of success, admittedly. But the truth is some planes suck and some planes are great. We're gonna help you to know Not only how, but why. And then sometimes, like with the receivers, we're gonna help you think through, why would I use this receiver versus that, okay? Because when you're making your spending decision, we wanna make it easy for you to have good advice to act on, okay? A lot of the YouTube channels you see anymore are shorts, and that's all they are, and that's why they look like they're such big channels. Well, the truth is, you know, if we have a 10-hour video, who has 10 hours to watch a video? Somebody does, because they've watched it. Well, here's the thing. We're gonna share a lot in 10 hours, okay? Now, if we have a short video and you watch part of it, that's fine. But just remember, there's answers you're gonna find in these videos. And so if you're brand new to the hobby and you really wanna get back to the hobby, if you wanna start into the hobby, we're gonna bring you alongside us the whole way through the project and not just the highlights, okay? Because highlights are fun when you're like pooping and you wanna look at your phone, okay? But here on Brian Phillips RC, we want you to be building, watching, learning. And after you watch 4 or 5 of our videos, which is a huge time commitment, it's like half of a work week, you know? You're gonna be probably good enough to do it that you don't need to watch your Unbox build radio setups until you run into a strange circumstance, in which case you'll say, oh, this one particular plane has a strange set of circumstances, I'm gonna watch that. We'll tell you about those strangities in our Unbox build radio setup, the maiden flight portion of it, and we'll point back to the Unbox build radio setup so you can find that information. So as you advance through the ranks in aviation, RC aviation, you're gonna be able to look back with us, learn the things you need to learn, and we're gonna bring you alongside us if you're brand new or if you're just returning to the hobby. That's what we do on Brian Phillips RC, okay? If you're already subscribed, I suggest you do it. Click the bell for notifications so you know when new content comes out. And we're gonna help you as much as we possibly can help you. But we can only help you as much as you're watching, okay? If you don't watch, we can't help. Because if we don't have you watch what we just did, how are you supposed to know? You might be able to ask a comment, get an answer once in a while, but you gotta remember, we got lots of comments that we've had tens and thousands of them in a given year. There's not enough hours in the day that I can answer every single one of them. I try my best. We used to do it for probably about 7 years. We replied to 100% of comments, even the jerk ones. But nowadays it's just like we physically can't do it. We got to a point where I was spending 3-4 days in a row of 100% of our free time, which is not much, just replying to comments to get caught up. I'd go on vacation, I'd get caught up on comments, and then I would go back to work and I would immediately be behind.
Yeah.
So we've just learned that the best way to do this is to give a holistic approach. We want you to have the entire project on video. So there's less left to questions, okay? All right, so hopefully we answered your questions there. This, of course, is set up. It's ready to rock and roll. We have everything in a physical position where it's gonna hopefully be safe. We won't have to deal with a lot of dinking around when we get ready to go to the flying field. In our case, our flying field is right here. Also, I didn't think about this wire that goes to the LEDs, but you know what? We got it not CA, but we got to China glue that.
Oh, okay.
Folks, I'm sorry. I honestly forgot about that cable until I just reached in there and checked my own work. And by the way, that's one thing I should point out. When you're doing RC aviation, there's a lot of things that you just do and you do and you do, and it is easy to make a mistake. We make mistakes. We make them on camera. It's embarrassing. But at the same time, part of this hobby is learning from your mistakes. My suggestion, if you're brand new to the hobby or if you're just returning and you want to get back up to speed as fast as possible, embrace your mistakes, learn from them, because listen, if you don't make mistakes, you're probably not doing this hobby, okay? If you think you can do this hobby and never make a mistake, then you're in the wrong hobbies. You're going to be making mistakes, I promise you. And even if you're a careful pilot, and I'm not saying that you need to be reckless or stupid or foolish or anything like that, there's people that would encourage you to get the wrong planes. That we think is reckless and foolishness. Okay, so you see that time, I worked I worked the China glue a little bit longer and I just pressed it in because I'm just holding this one little section. I don't care back here what happens because look, back here you're going into a sleeve. Once you're past that sleeve, you're pretty much good. It can flop around all at once, okay? But you saw how easy that was, okay? But remember, if it seems like I'm beating a dead horse, it's because I'm kind of trying to help the people that need a little more help. So if you think I'm beating a dead horse, take it as a compliment because the truth is there's people that need help still. We're helping those guys. So be patient with us. We try to strike the balance. All right, great. So now at this point, we have to get a battery loaded. We have to make sure our gear is still clear, which they should be clear in case they would deploy right around on power up. And that can happen. You don't necessarily have any control over it because you don't know how things are going to work yet. And so for that reason, we're going to suggest just for our Unbox build radio setup, we're gonna use this because it's a little bit easier to plug in the XT60. But just so you guys know, the weight is gonna be a difference between these two packs. And that's all that's gonna really matter is the CG point. So let's just talk about weight between the China hobby line and this smart battery. I'm gonna turn on our kitchen scale, nothing special. If you guys didn't know this, I work on industrial scales for a living, so I'm kind of a scale expert. Okay, so 228 grams compared to 228. So they are identical in weight, so there is no differential in center of gravity impact. However, because this is a shorter pack, you may be able to impact change slightly less with this than that because our battery straps are gonna hold a longer, more slender pack for a slightly longer duration before it lets go, okay? That's not to say that this is better than this. This is in fact better than this because it has the smart circuit. Why is that a big deal? When you got that many batteries in your living room, you wanna make sure that they're as safe as possible. That's not to say that these are gonna be inherently unsafe. Lithium polymer packs are one of two safety issues in planes. The second of which is the props. Not hitting yourself while you're flying, although you don't wanna do that. It's actually hugely rare to actually get hit by an airplane. People do it, usually doing stupid things or they're drunk. Don't fly drunk, okay? But these batteries are the most dangerous part of the hobby by far, okay? If you burn your house down, it's not just a quick trip to the emergency room, it's a year-long process of rebuilding. That's assuming nobody got hurt. Don't get hurt. The best way you can do that is manage your batteries carefully. Smart batteries are gonna help you with that because they have a discharge circuit in here that's gonna bring this back to storage level, which is gonna be the most chemically stable point that it's discharged to the point of not being able to then restore to charged, okay? Remember in lithium batteries, whether it be lithium polymer or lithium ion, we operate on the top of the range. Then there's this area that's not even used, okay? So let's say this is the full range of charge. You got 0 down here, you got 4.2. Anything over 4.2, it becomes chemically unstable. Anything under about 3, 2.8, the chargers aren't gonna recognize them. They're not gonna kick on and allow you to charge. That's per cell. So in this case, we have 4 cells. So 4 times 4.2 would be 16.8 volts at full charge, right? Well, you're rarely gonna be at full charge because even after you pull these off the charger, you're gonna drop down just a little bit on one of the cells. This thing's gonna keep it balanced. That's the second big advantage to this. Also, this happens to be a higher C rating in this case because this is a 50C pack. You can also get a 30C pack, exactly the same. That would be dollars to donuts, very similar in terms of output performance-wise. C ratings are largely a marketing gimmick. Full disclosure, I'm just telling you that now. But there is a certain amount of secondary truth to the fact that a higher C pack is generally going to be a slightly better pack, okay? That'd be kind of like a value judgment. And there's not some like analytical measure like 2200 milliamps. That would be the capacity of each of the 4 cells that are in series. And that's why they say 4C, for cells, not 4S, for series cells, right? So yeah, that's right. This is a 4S, 4 in series. They also have packs that used to be in parallel. So it'd be like 3S pack would be like 3S 2P, and you'd have 2 in parallel, 3 in series, or whatever it is. I'm just giving an example, okay? Also, don't be confused if you don't know, there is a C rating for how fast we can discharge into the plane. That generally speaks to the 50C. And then we have a C rating for how fast you can charge. So if you charge at 2C, that would be twice the capacity. So in this case, 2200 would be 4.4 amps or 4400 milliamps or 1,000th of an amp. Same thing here, but this pack actually tells you you can charge this at as fast as 11 amps or 5C. So 11 times 2200 would be 5,500 milliamps, okay? 5,500 milliamps is pretty fast. That's I did that math wrong. It'd be 5 times 2200 would be 11,000 milliamp hours. So 11 amps. You can charge this at. That's a lot of power, okay? All right, that being said, these are going to be otherwise equivalent for weight. So when we get ready to check, the CG will be in the right spot. But this one's a little harder to plug in. This one also gives you one additional benefit, even though it is kind of technically a drawback because we don't have the smart circuitry. This has 5 wires coming out of it. That's the balance lead. You can use what's called a voltage alarm. Now you can stay right there, camera crew. Voltage alarms are used to plug into batteries. And when used, they will tell you this is a Predator variation, so you could buy this for a few bucks when you're buying your airplane if you want. Yes, we will get commissioned if you follow our links to buy the plane and then you buy other goodies. These companies are good enough to us to share that cookie. Okay, so the negative goes to the negative, and this goes up to 8S, and this shows all the pack together. Okay, so you can see each individual cell. So 4.17, 4.2, so that one's full, 4.19, and then 4.20. So this is out of balance by 100th. Okay, so about 1%. Not a big deal. I'm not worried about cell mismatch to that level. This one will be pretty much dead nuts, and I'm going to show you another tool you can use to check that. A little bit of a diversion here, guys. I apologize. This is what we do on Brian Phillips RC, because at the end of the day, we're trying to bring value to you and not just tell you to buy a plane so we can make a few bucks in commission. Okay, we're plugging this in. This comes up, it's going to give you the full smart battery, so obviously it's get more resolution there, and it shows 4.18, 4.19, 4.17, 4.19, and it's currently actively balancing. You can also press and hold, and you can go to the smart settings. I have mine set to automatically discharge at 240 hours. Okay, so that's pretty cool. You can also turn that feature off, and all you have to do is use an XPC battery checker. You can see there's an off setting, then there's 240. It starts at 72 volts. I'm going to click to acknowledge. I'm going to press and hold for a moment. You can also click short, and you can do a servo tester here, which is pretty cool. This is a tool that most people should have in their tool bag. It also has the balance lead here. If you had a balance lead on a Gen 1, you would have a balance lead. On a Gen 2, you don't. So even with a dumb battery, and not to take anything away from this, but just to clarify, you can plug this in without the discharge lead, and you'll see your cell count. Now you're like, that looks pretty dang well balanced. That's because these little voltmeters are not going to tend to be 100% accurate. This is going to be a lot more accurate, okay? Now, also, if you're using this as a voltage alarm, this can help you to know when you're out of power, okay? So you can press this button up here on the top. I'm going to set it to 3.3 volts. DC. That means that if any of the in this case, 4 cells drops below 3.3 in the duration of time when it's below 3.3, it's going to beep, 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 and it's going to sound just real similar to that. Okay, it's going to beep, and it's loud, and you'll hear it from a distance, and you'll hear it from if the plane is a ways away, right? So then also, if you were to crash a plane in an unfortunate accident, and the battery, as it's dying, you'll hear it beeping, so you can find it a little easier. So that's a cheap insurance. So good reasons to have that, but also this happens to have an XT60, which makes it a little easier to plug in than the IC3. So different discharge leads, but the same drum size on the connector. All right, that was quite the devolution into battery technology. But here on Brian Phillips RC, we know what we're talking about, and we want you guys to have the best possible experience. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna strap this battery in for its first ride, and it's not gonna be a ride at all, it's gonna be a setup, okay? So you can pull this strap through, you can open the second strap, and you can get this ready to go. Camera crew, catch that please. And we're gonna drop this down in here, and you can see the leads are toward each other. I'm gonna actually go back. I think I can fit them back easier. And I'm just gonna drop this in here, whichever direction makes it more comfortable for me. I think I wanna go this way. So sorry, the label's upside down now. So I'm gonna pull this Velcro. I'm gonna pull it tight. Remember, you don't have to be like ultra tight, because now we have that shelf liner in there that helps to brace it to the plane through the Velcro and the adhesives that are in play there. Push that down and then just let this over, and there you go. So now if we're using a voltage alarm, just real quick, we'll go ahead and put the voltage alarm in here, show you how that would work. Again, this is just a dumb pack, so you can use a smart pack, you can use a dumb pack. You're gonna have a pretty good amount of C discharge capacity on this. Find a little pocket to drop that in. That works perfect, actually. And then we'll be ready to plug in. The first step we wanna do is triple check clearance for prop, triple check clearance for gear, and then we're gonna go ahead and get ready. We're in the monitor mode, so we can hit back, or we can click into the function list and get ready to bind. So there's bind. We're not gonna plug in yet until we're ready. I need to make sure that I am safe. See this? If my elbow would get hit if that started. We're not gonna trust the plane until we trust it. Plugging it in. Don't worry about anything other than prop right now. Wait for things to beep. If anything crazy happens, you wanna know. I am now securing the plane with my body. See, my body's in the way. I can reach up and do this without getting into the prop. I'm gonna hit bind. I'm gonna then press this button. It's gonna start beeping. Then I'm gonna hit yes. Then I'm gonna hit bind. So it's obviously connecting because it changed the state of the lights. This is where you gotta be careful, because if it would arm the ESC, which it just did, that's the noise. And if it would start, then you don't wanna get cut. By the way, I've been cut one time on props, and that was using an ultra micro, and I had 2 receivers bound to 1 transmitter. It was a very complicated setup. Okay, elevator's not hooked up. Okay, so that is not the elevator. That's the rudder. That's the ailerons, that's the rudder. Except that's not the rudder. So that means we need to flop 2 of these wires. They were mislabeled unless I did something wrong. Yeah, that one definitely says elevator, right?
On the 3rd one down, or the...
Maybe I just plugged it in the wrong one.
Well, we plugged them in upside down before you rotated them, but I thought you had it right.
Okay, so in that case, we gotta fix that right now. So I'm gonna go ahead. Now let's just verify throttle cut is technically on. I did not have that on. I should have had it on, but I didn't have it turned on. So that's why we're so careful. Now throttle stick moving, it did not start spinning. Throttle cut is off. Now I'm gonna test it. Yep, it's working, and then throttle cut is on and tested. I can now trust this plane to behave so I can have my elbow where I need to have my elbow, okay? That's why you leave the prop off if you're new, in case you make a mistake and forget to have the throttle cut on or you set it up wrong. You can test that stuff, okay? So now that this is disconnected, we're gonna go in here to channel, looks like channel number 2 is ailerons, then elevator, then rudder. So I must have flip-flopped the 3rd and 4th. So I have to unplug this from above and go down, okay? So that's just disconnected to get to it so I can see good. Now I need to flip these 2. This one is evidently needs to go to the opposite one. So this one is the one that we glued in. Okay, so it needs to go up 1, so I'm gonna unplug it. It may need to go under and back through from the other side so we have enough reach. This one is now taking its spot, unless I'm mistaken. Okay, so I just plugged that in. So that's actually the furthest one. Yeah, that's rudder. I think I just plugged them in wrong, guys. They were labeled correct. Brian Phillips RC here at your fingertips or click. Made a big mistake. Okay, so now I'm gonna slide this in. Why do we do all these checks and balances, folks? Because people make mistakes up to and including your favorite RC Class Z celebrities. That'd be Brian Phillips RC, Class C celebrity. Okay, so we're plugging this in. Now, I just wanna show you something. Look at where that wire is. Come around here and show them that wire. You see that wire for the elevator, how it's wrapped around all the other wires? We don't have a lot of excess, but you know what? We don't need a lot of excess. We don't need a lot of excess, we need the right amount of excess, okay? So long as that is not interfering with this and it's not gonna get trapped somewhere and screw up anything, then I'm comfortable with it. And as long as it isn't pulling itself out, I'm okay with it. All right, so now, electronic speed control. We're gonna drop this down. We're gonna plug it in. You'll notice I have my arm in front of the prop, and I trust it enough to at least plug it in. I keep my face back from the prop. Wait till everything starts. No reason to tempt fate. Okay, great. Now, we have to do something with the elevator because it's not hooked up. We have to also check the surfaces and see what direction they're moving. Currently, my gear are not down. I'm gonna put them down. Cool. You guys get to see the Virgin run.
No nose gear. Oh, it started to go that time.
There they go. Okay, so 1 cycle. Okay, so I'm gonna leave them down for a second. I also noticed that that's not the direction I want it. I want this to be pulled up. So I'm gonna click into function list, servo setup, travel, reverse, gear. So that should put the gear back up, gear down. Steerable is working, rudder is working, but now we need to turn the plane so we can see what direction things are going. And this is the flashing light, as you can see on the bottom, pretty awesome. That's what that little controller did. So if you did it FMS's way, then these would be flashing annoyingly. I do not want my nav lights or my landing light to flash. If you want them to flash, that's congratulations. There's 2 additional ports. You can put anything in there and it'll flash. The flaps are down just a little bit. So camera crew, why are you there? So, elevator not working, don't care. That's backward. I'm gonna rotate these first or reverse them. Now that's gonna roll us that way or this way, okay? Elevator not hooked up, yaw left, yaw right. Now check the steerable. It's opposite the rudder, that's good enough. So we know that that's all going in the right direction. Now this elevator should be, when I pull back on the stick, it should go up. Yep, that's gonna push that up and that is the correct direction. So we know we're in the correct direction. Why do I care if the directions are correct? Because I wanna put the canopy on and flip this plane over. And if the directions are backward, sometimes there's a little bit of a difference, hardly any, in the absolute position of the 0 position, okay? So I like to know before I make mechanical adjustments. And the mechanical adjustments we're about to make are about to happen. Why does that feel like it's not going down? Am I hitting something? Look with me. I feel like I might be hitting a wire, or am I hitting the battery?
Are you hitting the
I think I might be hitting the battery.
Oh.
Yep, the pilot's moving just ever so slightly. So this battery might be too thick. Well, that sucks.
That's annoying. I
don't think we're hitting the receiver, but if we are, that would be right here and right here for the voltage alarm. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a little tiny bit of trimming, housekeeping here, just to see if I can get this all to fit. So we're gonna use an X-Acto knife real quick, then we're gonna go back to the elevator, okay? So I've got my X-Acto knife here. I'm just looking from the side. I wanna just trim a little bit here. Okay, so between this and this. So between this and this, just a little teeny bit. Doesn't need to be a lot. Just like honestly, hardly at all. I just wanna take this edge off. You don't have to do this, but this is just more of a preparation. And you know what? I'm just gonna carry it all the way back. That's what I'll do. Because then I've got a little bit for the receiver, if the receiver is the other half of the equation causing the problem. I didn't cut very deep there, so I gotta come back and double cut that. Okay, you guys see what's going on? Keep your thumb out of the way. All right, very good. So now I've got just a little bit more clearance. Let's see if that works. I think we're hitting the battery. So there's a strap right here, and you've got a lot of thickness, so I'm just gonna take a little bit of this out. So just cut across, cut across, cut across at an angle, cut across at an angle. I wanna be able to use that battery. That's a good battery for this plane. So there's no sense in not using it. Now, I need to get something I can kind of reach in and pull up with. You know what I'm thinking of is that shims, those shims, hon, that I have, 20,000 shims.
Oh.
But since people aren't necessarily gonna have 20,000 shims, I gotta think of the best tool I can use to dig this out. So come around here, I'll show you. So I took and cut this at a real steep angle. I'm just gonna go real steep. We got lots of depth to work with. So I think I can get most of the way there. I'm gonna come back over here. Remember, this is just foam, guys. We're just carving a little bit of foam, no big deal. It doesn't need to be perfect because we have so much thickness here that we're almost for sure not gonna poke through. Okay, then I'll just lift it up a little bit so that I can reach through and get that last little tiny bit, right? So that's gonna make it a little bit thinner up in the canopy cockpit area, but that's okay because it's not gonna be enough to rip out from the top, so you won't see it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna come down here, go a little bit deeper on my side cut. There we go. So we're just carving this out, folks. Why are we carving this out? So that we can get that battery strap not to hit. I think the strap is what's bumping us, okay? And how did I know to cut right there? Well, what I did was I just held this up, and that's the home position. So it looks like we're gonna hit this wood, unfortunately. That might be close. And then right here, we've got another strap location. So I'm just gonna come in here and just cut like that. Then I'm gonna just cut like that. And then I'm gonna go in here at a pretty steep angle and just take that. And I'm gonna come in here at a pretty steep angle and try to take that, okay? My cut's not very square, so I'll come in here just a little bit more and just complete that cut. Now, the other thing you can do is you can just hack and dig if you want with something like forceps, but just be careful. We don't have a lot of thickness, so I don't wanna get too crazy. but that will help make that lift up for you, okay? Remember, you've got quite a bit of thickness here. You see you've got this like thing here, okay? So let's come in here and grab that with the forceps. See, I've got tons of material in there I can take out. And no, you don't have to do this. It just happens to be that our battery, where it's situated, is going to be hitting that, potentially. Okay, see, lots of height, lots of headroom. Oh yeah, that's better. Now, I'm going to just tighten these screws a little bit, and that's going to squish the pilot either up or it's going to squish it down. I'm going to go to a 4mm, 5mm. Going to a pretty big screwdriver. This would be like a number 2 screwdriver. I want to see if I can squish this up. It doesn't feel like it's going to go up at all. It's just going to probably hold the pilot a little tighter. It's a nice looking pilot, so I would really like to not damage it. So in order to do this, I'm going to just take and cut just a little bit further back. Just kind of carry over and then cut in. And then just carefully cut in. Carefully walk that back. Remember, this is just being extracted so we can make room for our battery straps. Okay. I think we're still hitting that front one. So that means I need to try to pull this pilot out, but I don't want him to fall. See? So see if I can undo this on this side. 10-minute build, hon. See, the pilot's gonna move when I press on him. Do you like this 10-minute build? Mm-hmm. So the camera crew and I have a little bit of a mess to clean up here, which we'll grab in a second. But basically, all I'm gonna do is walk this screw out. I'm just trying to think if I can walk this screw out. I might be able to just cut out a little bit more of this foam, but look. See, that just goes up into him and he's got a bunch of glue in there, okay?
But what do you...
What do you what?
I guess I'm not following what you're doing, but...
I'm making clearance for that
well,
strap.
I know that.
What? You gotta, I gotta cut foam out, and this is sandwiched in here. So if I could hold him, but I can't, he's inside of a cavity, I have to try to squish this foam up, okay?
Or you're taking out foam from under the block.
Yeah.
Under the piece of wood.
How would you take the foam out from under that block without undoing the screw? Do you have an idea that you could share?
No, I didn't understand what you were doing, but I understand now.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I think he's also glued in there a little bit, because like when I press on this, he doesn't pop up, okay? So I just really don't want him to fall off, because that'd be a pain in the butt to get him back.
Yeah.
Okay? But you guys see what I'm doing here. All I'm doing is I'm just pulling this guy so that I was trying to do one at a time. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, I can come in here and real carefully take just a little extra depth, right? And that's just gonna basically, I mean, I don't need a ton more. It just happens to be right where the guy is sitting, you know? Okay. So now that we've cut around there, we can just try to rip that out. Yep, just like that. And now we gain that much thickness. So that should be this little edge. I want to try and get this edge just a little bit more. Now you could do this more carefully or more specifically than what I'm doing. But keep in mind, guys, this is just foam. It is relatively easy to cut. Okay. So now I want to just real carefully get this screw started without pushing the pilot off.
Excuse me, sorry.
Okay. I heard kind of a weird noise, so I wanted to make sure it wasn't something failing on us. Okay, so you can see that screw's going in. So once that screw starts to go in, then I'm gonna go back to the other screw, and all that we're concerned about right this second is just making sure pilot doesn't pop off of the top, okay? And then what's gonna happen is we're automatically gonna gain a little bit of extra depth on the canopy here, but we don't want pilot to fall off, okay? So yeah, look at that. Now we've got that tucked way up in there. Pretty easy process. It's not perfect, it's not super pretty, but like nobody really cares about the bottom side of the canopy in my experience, okay? So now this should drop down nicely. Oh yeah, you can feel that now. See the magnet? Pulls it tight, good tight seam. Folks, listen, there's a reason people watch Brian Phillips RC, and it's not because it's a short video. They watch it because we show all these steps in these 10-minute builds, okay? So as you can see, this is clearly not a 10-minute build if you really do all the steps that I consider to be necessary. But sometimes necessary is a little bit of a subjective thing. Would you have to do that to make that plane fly? No. But when I watch the manufacturers and the videos that they make, they slap stuff together and then go fly it and it looks like crap. And I'm like, why would you make it look like crap? You're trying to sell these things. And it just drives me crazy because I want them to look as good as they can look because I am into the scale flight performance. I want to see the way it can look at its best. Okay. It doesn't mean I do the best. It just means I do my best. Okay. Now, plane's upside down. We can move this out of the way for just a quick second. These are not spring loaded. They're just rock hard tires. Feel like good retracts though. Okay, and then you can see the steerable, moves that shaft, moves it along when it's on. Nice gear door, look at this gear door. Beautiful. Yeah. Nice closure. Okay, good, and then that split flap is weird. We'll get back to that here in a minute. So, now that we have all that stuff done, we've got the canopy on, I can put this upside down with some level of impunity. I don't want to break my antenna off. I don't want to get in a position where I'm actually start the plane. Now that we know that we're good on the physical operation, we can go ahead and finish this project. We want it to be in the outermost hole, but how do we know this is centered? Well, first of all, we know it's centered. That's so weird. I keep hearing this like pulse.
I know, I'm hearing it too.
Hey, it's that.
That's weird.
Give me your mic. You guys see that? Now, there's some feedback. It's on that servo. Mm-hmm. I want to know why it's on that servo. There's feedback going through it.
Yeah,
it's definitely from the light controller, 100% for sure. So if we have any issues, now it doesn't seem to interfere with the movement, but that pulse width modulation is being interfered with. It stopped. It stopped. Now it's quiet. That is so weird, guys. I'm sorry, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but that was weird, and I want to make sure it's not going to cause a problem. Okay, so now we need to have this elevator so it's level, okay? We don't want it janking like this, just flying down the street. We don't want to be taken off and having it nose down. So what I do is I hold this. You can hold it right here or right here. And then this needs to go to the outermost hole, okay? How do we know that? Because it says in the manual. So you can hold this with 2 fingers or you can get a pair of needle nose pliers. Camera crew, you want to show them on the manual real quick exactly where it shows that so they know what we're talking about. So remember, this is, why did that get changed?
Because we were looking for...
Okay, so we're looking for the elevator. It goes to the outermost hole, okay? So that means that I need some needle nose to hang on to this because that's a big adjustment. Started doing it again. Nope, then it stopped. Okay, so this needs to go in a lot. That's good. That's the way I'd want it to go. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. You see how you're likely to break that if you're not careful. There's 5, I can barely turn it. There's 6. Okay, so now, 6 is where it needs to be probably too. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this rubber, which is a fuel hose, fuel pipe, or not pipe, fuel hose, fuel tube. We're gonna move it back here, and then I'm just gonna hold this with my fingers, and yeah, that's gonna line up pretty close. So I'm gonna let this thing open, the clevis, and push that through the hole.
Right here,
I understand. It's painted. I think that's why it's not wanting to go through. Yep, now it's through. And now we're just gonna verify. Yeah, that looks pretty dang level, guys. That looks very level, okay? So now this needs to be forced all the way through. Goodness gracious, that's hard to fit through. Yeah, I hear that noise again. There it goes. Now the head pops through and you could snap it. Then you can take this and put it back through, but I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna take and hold this, leaving a relief for the thing to pop through, because that is a really tight hold, okay? Now elevator seems to be working. Great, now all the control surfaces are physically hooked up, installed. Now we can put it on its mains. we've got the gear in the correct position. We've modified the hood or the canopy so that it fits. This is a pretty nice feeling plane. It's gonna be kind of hard to hold because of this antenna back here. I like the way it looks a lot. It looks really good. Okay, so now I'm gonna walk out of the menu from all my reverse functions, and I'm gonna just put this plane through its paces on the controls. Elevator up, elevator down. Roll left, roll right. Yaw left, yaw right. Everything is working. The flaps aren't set, so let's scroll in the function list down to flap system. Now, I'm gonna run the flaps. I'm in the normal flight mode, so I want this to be tucked in all the way. So it's gonna be like the -100 position. So there's -100. I wanna show you something about this. So -100 is where we need it. I gotta put this thing back on its belly so you guys can see what I'm talking about. You're gonna notice that it's not all the way up, okay? Why is it not all the way up? That's because there's, in Spectrum world, we don't use the entire pulse width modulation. We use 0 is the center of the stick, +100, -100. You can go +150 to -150. So there's like a third again as much. And all I need to do is I want to get this thing to tuck all the way down in there. So it's at -100. So now let's do full deployment. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll down to the landing flaps. And I'm gonna go plus until something hits. Nothing hit. And it looks like we got clearance there. So we should be able to go plus or minus more. Okay, so we've got the 2-second deployment. So there's some takeoff flaps. There's our normal flight mode. So in order to manipulate how much travel we have, we just highlight the flap in whatever position we want, or we go to the middle and we can open both up. And I think we're gonna open up both to, let's go to like 145. Okay, so in this setting, look, hey, I'm gonna back off until I see it come up. See how it's coming up? Mm-hmm. Okay, you can see where it's just barely breaking up. So I'm gonna go 140, because there's no reason to overdrive the servo. Then I'm gonna go to full landing flaps. Remember, we already set it to 100 and -100. Yeah, you definitely have the full throw if you want. So I'm gonna go to 145. Now, why not 150? Well, the reason I'm not going to 150 is because I'm gonna watch that now. It stops at the end. I can see it moving, but just barely. Now it's starting to move. I don't think we're binding it all, so I'm gonna go 145. Now I'm gonna watch the sweep. There is definitely a distinct, like, getting out to a locked position. So like the servo is going like this, the linkage is my arm. It's getting driven and then eventually like pushed down like that. So it's not actually moving anymore, but the servo is still moving. Same would be true for locking it in position for the landing flaps, okay? So the landing flaps, or excuse me, the regular flight mode, that's where I'm most concerned. I just don't want it to be getting in a position where it's pulling it down and it's just overdriving itself, because that'll just burn out your servo. Okay, so 135. All right, so we've got that. Now we can go into, into the, what am I trying to say, camera crew?
Flap mode?
Flap mode, flap system. And I can mess with my absolute position. So for takeoff, I want this to be generally very little, okay? So like -15 in this case. So it'd be just a little bit, and then landing flaps is gonna be like all the way down. That's as far down as it's gonna go mechanically, right? So now we've got that set, and I wanna see this elevator droop the same way. So it's gonna go up in this case, because it's upside down. So it's gonna go down. Now, if you can't see, turn this way up. Oh yeah, that goes down for sure. So I want it to go plus, and I'm gonna go 6 and then 9. So landing flaps, now let's go 6 and 12. Okay, very subtle change, but look at that, it's not centered. I was holding here, I should have been holding here. See that? It's not centered. I'm gonna try to make them the same. See this is down more than that. Mm-hmm. This is wired in there, okay? So I feel like, okay, so when I'm in regular flight mode, the other thing is you can actually take this and you could run this to positive, to negative. See how it's negative? But just keep in mind, you're using up elevator throw by doing that, okay? So that's 12%. I don't want to give up 12% of my elevator function, okay? So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come back into this and fix my problem. And this is where I'm concerned because I don't know that I'm gonna be able to get, I know I can come out, I can't go in. That's right, we were bottomed out. Okay, so in order to adjust this mechanically, I'm gonna slide this off. Then I'm gonna try to pop this off. And usually to pop it off, you have to pry it off. So I used my fingernail, it worked. Now I want this to come out just a hair. So that means I need to use my needle nose pliers to hang onto the shaft, hold it tight. Now I'm gonna come out. So I'm gonna snap that shut actually. And then I'm gonna use this fuel tube to help me get a little bit more purchase on this plastic. Oh man, that's hard to turn. There's one full turn. I'm gonna go one more half turn and see where we look. Okay, so now I can pop this open with my fingernails again. And then I'm gonna put it in the outermost hole. And then I'm looking at this. Oh yeah, we got that way better now. So I was looking out here, but honestly, you know what? Go look at the end. Now I'm overshot. See?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go in at least one half. There's one half, and let's see what we look like. Just guess and check here, guys. That's what we're doing, 1.5. Yep, we did one turn out, and then we'll slide this back down. Now, yours might be a little different, but the truth is this gap is less critical than this, in my opinion, because this could be deviated slightly because of the way that everything molds together, okay? Does that make sense to you, the way I said that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. So, there you have it. We have a plane that you could technically go out and fly if you knew what you were doing and you didn't want a stabilizer involved. But we're gonna go through setting up the stabilizer now. So the stabilizer is all set up through forward program. Forward programming is a programming technique where we actually connect to the receiver from the wireless connection, and then we set up all the different settings for stabilizer and auto leveling, all that jazz, okay? The good news is at this point, we don't need any more of this crap. We used one zip tie. Cable management went through together. Pretty easy, I would say. And I gotta say, even though that was definitely longer than 10 minutes, we've had a heck of a lot more involved builds. And I would say that this particular build it went together pretty easy. That was an easy build. The problems we ran into were minor like adjustments.
Yep.
It's not like we had to redesign the plane in order to make it work.
Cut out holes for screws that didn't fit.
Exactly. Now, the other thing is the center of gravity, because that's part of the build. We've already got the battery where it needs to be, so why don't we just measure that out real quick and we'll get that done too.
Okay.
Before we do the final forward programming.
We're probably about 15, 20 minutes away.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
so center of gravity is easy to mark.
Yep.
You're gonna take a black marker or something like this if you wanna do it exactly like me. And all we have to do, by the way, we are done with that flap mode. So throttle cuts on, timer's cleared. What do we need, 60 to 70?
Yes.
So turn on your calipers in millimeters. I'm gonna go to 60. Then I'm gonna just walk it out so it's right where we want it. I'm gonna measure it. This does taper back a little bit, okay? So just be careful where you mark it so you can see it good. There's one marking. You wanna be able to balance the plane on that. So now that I have a mark, I'm gonna be able to transpose it almost exactly the same just from the markings on the wings. Now I'm gonna go to 70. There's that little box we're going in front of. Somewhere at about 70 millimeters. You can also measure from your first mark if you're confident in its placement. There's 10 millimeters or so back. Okay, so we just make a little dent. And then we just make a little dent. And guys, I'd be lying if I said I didn't believe this, but I think that your center of gravity mark is gonna be very close to between this box and that line there, okay? So then I just take and darken the hole a little bit with my marker, okay? So this marker is just a run-of-the-mill Sharpie, nothing special or unique about that. But the calipers work really good for this step. Now that we have the battery in, and they weigh exactly the same, we can see if it centers out or balances out. So I'm on the back hole, and she's good. On the front hole, she's a little bit tail heavy, okay? So my suggestion is, when you load your battery, you'll probably favor just a hair forward, something like that, and then let's retest, and then we'll mark the canopy or inside the cockpit so you can see that. Now I am testing with the gear forward. Keep in mind you have a forward facing landing gear. So we're gonna be very, very lightly nose heavy on the back hole and tail heavy on the back, but in the center, I feel like we're still just a hair tail heavy, but that's probably where we need to be because I like the way that the battery's positioned. Also, when that gear comes back, it's gonna tend to make it a little bit more tail heavy. So I guess I am gonna push it forward just a little bit more. So let's see if we can get a little bit more by pushing it all the way. By the way, that canopy, I'm glad we adjusted it because it needed it.
Yeah, it's a lot more definitive now.
If you don't do it, you'll have your canopy coming off. Okay, on the back hole, we're definitely nose heavy now. On the front hole, we're tail heavy, and then somewhere in the middle, we're good. Now, gear retracted. We can check the CG just to see how we feel, because if you have a nose wheel that goes back like that, it does change your center of gravity. You're gonna be balanced on the back hole. You're gonna be a little bit tail heavy on the front hole, but I think that's where we wanna be. And so I'm gonna go ahead and deploy the gear again, get this thing back on the mains, and I'm gonna mark it, okay? So I'm just gonna go like this. I'm just gonna go slightly ahead of where we are, and I'm gonna just go right where we are here. I'm gonna draw an arrow that goes like this to indicate where we want the wire. And we can also put the wire this way, which is a good point. So we'll do this. That'll give us a little bit more. So 2200 4S, okay? Got it? And then this is gonna be not there. So that'll get a little bit more weight forward, and you can also put your voltage alarm up here, and that's gonna help tip the scales to our favor. But now that we know, let's take note of where this receiver is, how it's mounted. It's got a little bit of a curl here, probably inboard just a hair from the top to the bottom. So what I'm saying is on the inside of that body, it's not square. It's got a little bit of a turn to it. Okay, that'll get picked up by a correction we'll show you in the forward programming. Okay, all right, so one last test before we do forward programming. If you don't have this set right now, it's not gonna work. We have to do all the control surfaces to make sure they're all moving in the right direction. Yes, if you're keeping track, this is probably the 4th time we've done it. If you haven't done it once, you need to do it at least once. Elevator up, elevator down, yes. Roll left, roll right, yes. Yaw left, yaw right. Yaw left, yaw right for the nose wheel, and then take off flaps, landing flaps, and the correction is the correct direction. Very good. So now we're ready for forward programming. Forward programming is a fairly easy and quick process here. Click, scroll down, go into forward programming. This connects to your receiver, gyro settings, first time setup. Get everything set right, set it level, hit continue, set it on nose, hit continue. This is where it indicates to the receiver what position it is, relative gravity, and where the plane is. Okay, look at that, looks right to me. So if you're in any doubt, line this up, take off the canopy, look inside, make sure it looks right. I know that that looks right to me. Orientation 6 in this case. Continue. Gain channel is set. We already know it's the R rotary knob, so aux 3. So we'll go up here to this. We'll exercise it doesn't set it. So we'll go to aux 3, and it shows the input that's currently configured. Remember, that is not always true. You might have to change it as well. Then we're gonna apply, it's gonna dance once. Please wait, the receiver's one dance, okay? So now we click, that brings us back into forward programming. Go to gyro settings, first time safe setup. Confirm the flight mode channel has been set. It has not been set. Actually, hold on. We're gonna set this to switch D. It does work by exercising there, but that's not correct. It should be aux 2, okay? See, it says flight mode now, and hit next. Remember how we set up the labels earlier? I'm gonna hit continue. See, it says 1, it says 3. Okay, I'm gonna hit back. I forgot, I gotta do something here first. AS3X setup, flight mode setup. Yep, it's working because it took the setting from the other one, but if you didn't, you would go in here and just make sure that this is correct, okay? I want AS3X off in this mode because that's off. I want it on this mode, and I want it on in this mode. Okay, so now I'm hit next. Okay, now we can hit back. Now we can go to first time setup. Sorry about that, folks. I'm just gonna hit continue. We've already checked it. I want safe to be in this mode. I'm gonna hit next. Now this is where you level the plane and you capture the attitude. Look at that. Roll -5. Pitch -1. Okay? If you're in any doubt, do it again. Look at the plane. Does it look like it's going to fly level? Go over to the side. If in doubt, suppose you need it to fly like this, or you want it to fly a little bit downhill. Okay? This is where you would make that adjustment with pillows or blocks or books or whatever. So in this case, I'll just demonstrate. Let's say it's a tail dragger. You don't want it to tail drag like this, but I'm going to just show you how it works. See this? Look at that. It just makes up for the pitch correction if this plane were setting like that. But remember, tail draggers don't take off that way. They take off and fly level. Okay? So you're going to level, model, and capture attitude. Okay? Very good. So first time safe setup. I clicked wrong. Sorry. Continue. Next. All right. So that's already done. Hit next. Okay. So in this mode, this is your limits of your bank angles. I'm going to set it to I'm actually going to set it to 70. I was not happy with the last one we did at just 60. This is going to allow us to go downhill more and then more uphill, but not anymore on the left and right because it's going to limit your roll angles. But you have to turn that on to self-level with angle demand. Now remember, in this mode, it's nothing because it's off. And in this mode, it's also off. So you see how it says safe mode inhibit, then self-level with angle demand. Angle demand is this is applied to your AS3X as well. Now we hit apply. Now you're going to watch two dances. Wait, reboot. There's one dance. There's two. You can listen for that at startup so that you know it's working or it has worked, but that does not necessarily mean you're in safe. I'm in safe right now. If you click, you're going to go back into gyro settings. You're going to go to AS3X settings, AS3X gains. Now you can see we're in flight mode 3. So it's 40, 50, 60 by default. We'll leave it there. Then it's off. Then it's 40, 50, 60. Okay? Now you can do fixed adjustable. It's adjustable because we set it to rotary knob. Okay? Now watch this. Fixed adjustable. You can also go to flight mode 3 and you can see that they are also adjustable even in safe, right? Now hit next. Okay. So that's heading gain is fixed and fixed. But you can make those adjustable as well. I'm not going to adjust those. Okay. And then stop lock release rates are new for AS3X Plus. We're not going to go into those. We're going to leave those at default. Okay. So you can capture gyro gains. And also that would be like after you fly. You can set this as high as 4x. I'm going to show you why you would set it as high as 4x. Okay. Now I'm going to walk out of the menu structure. I'm going to go to regular flight mode. Throttle cut is on. As you may already be aware, AS3X is only on after you've given 25% of throttle, but get this, safe is on immediately. Okay. So you can check this quick. It's trying to auto level the plane. So it's going to roll that way, the quickest route to level, or if you're here, it's going to go the quickest route to level. Also, the elevator, as you can see, is going to be pointed like it's trying to pull out of this dive, and it is. Now watch this. Let's say you're going uphill, kind of awkward to do this. It's going to try to pull out of this climb and bring you level. When you let go of the 6, it's going to be level. Looks level to me, so that means safe is working. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to AS3X. Throttle cuts off, give it a little bit of throttle, lots of power, that's good. Throttle cuts on. Now we're gonna see if AS3X is working by turning the knob all the way up at 4x, remember? Look at that, look at that. You can see it plain as day. Off. AS3X and safe, off. AS3X only. Okay, now watch the elevator. When I go up, this will go up to resist. Up, now down. Different than auto leveling, it's just resisting environmental impact that is not my sticks, okay? See this, watch this. I'm gonna go up with the wing, it's gonna go up. I'm gonna go down, it's gonna go down. Now same thing over here, because this is a Y cable, you can rest assured it's probably gonna work, provided you already did your due diligence earlier in the build, but I'm gonna still check it anyway. Up is up, down is down. Left, right. If you couldn't tell from watching, what you're gonna do is you're looking down the length of the plane, and you just rotate it and it's going to resist whatever direction you're rotating. Same thing with the elevator, same thing with the ailerons. Okay? So now that we've done that, we can just go ahead and check our master gain is going to work. I'm all the way up on the rotary knob. I'm 50% down. Now I'm off and I'm building. You can see it's working because the amplitude of my shake is the same, but the output is changing. Great, so we've checked all the directions of travel. We've checked the rotary knob is working. Now we're gonna go back into forward programming. And we're gonna go to gyro settings and we're gonna change it from AS3X. Gain sensitivity is gonna go down to 1X. That's gonna get us where to start. Now, you can also go into system setup. You can go down to utilities and you can do gyro response test in AS3X Plus. When this is on, watch this. It exaggerates everything regardless of any of your setups. So you can really easily see if they're correcting in the right direction. Why do I not like this test? Because it is still a special mode, okay? All right, guys, we've done all the regular setup for AS3X, all the regular setup for Safe. We've set up dual rates in Expo. We've set up and attached our master gains. We've also made it so you can turn it off. We've made it so she'll tell you what the setting is that you're on. We've also reversed all the directions so that the gear are in the correct position. We've set up the lights so that they're on and not some stupid flash like this one. I like, those ones I wouldn't. We've answered hopefully all the questions you could possibly have and given you a chance to get in the air. So at the end of the day, if you want to help return the favorite of Brian Phillips RC, buy the plane from the links in the video description below. We'll make small commissions from the companies we work with. And if you don't want to do that, you can also buy the transmitter, receivers, batteries, or Patreon for monthly support, YouTube monthly support, members, YouTube Super Thanks, or PayPal for one-time donations, any of which are always much appreciated. But at the end of the day, buy the planes from the links. That's how we win, and we make this hobby win the best. All right, guys, forward-facing light looks great. Plane is ready to fly. Throttle cuts off. We'll give you a full throttle pass real quick. Pretty good amount of power, and throttle cuts back on and tested. Guys, this thing is ready. We hope we answered all your questions. These videos are long for a reason. We appreciate you hanging in there. We want to get you in the air and out of the chair. Stay tuned. There's so much more right around the corner on Brian Phillips RC. Thanks for watching.